Hello everyone. First of all, thank you very much for coming along today. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Brooke Marshall and I'm the Chief Executive of Feeling Strong. And we're hosting today's event in partnership with a whole range of organisations, including NHS Tayside, who will be talking today and telling you a little bit about what they do. I'm going to be very brief because we have a very packed agenda. So what I wanted to kind of kick off with was when pulling together this event, one of the things that we really wanted to make sure we were doing was highlighting and platforming the work of communities and what they've done towards supporting and delivering the strategy, right from conception all the way through to where we are now, and also what the future looks like for the strategy and how that's going to be implemented. And we're going to have the opportunity to ask questions of the Chief Exec and the Mental Health Director of NHS Tayside, and they'll be able to help talk about the future along with the community groups and what they envisage the future for mental health in Tayside is going to look like. Just kind of some housekeeping before we begin. This event is being recorded because this is a Zoom webinar. If you're attending today, you won't be able to share your camera or your screen or anything like that. That was just so we could keep it a little bit more manageable. However, you will be able to interact by using the Q&A feature, which should be along the bottom of your screen. If you click on that button, you'll be able to ask questions. Because we have such a tight agenda and we've had so many questions in advance, and we may not be able to answer all of the questions. However, we've had a commitment from the team at NHS Tayside that anything that isn't answered here today, and we'll be able to feed back in some form to people who have attended. So without any further ado, I'm going to hand over to Jane Duncan, who's the Communications and Engagement Director at NHS Tayside. She'll say a little bit and then we'll continue with our agenda, which first up is Graham.
Thanks, Brooke. I think that's me on now properly. Just give me a thumbs up if you can hear me fine. That's good. Thank you. So first, thank you very much. Thanks, Brooke, for that introduction. And I'd like to thank everybody who has come along today. I can see that there are over 60 participants actually already. We're able to see that, so that's really, really encouraging. I want to thank everybody who's been involved in today in organising it and the planning. You know, every day is a school day at the moment for all of us in terms of learning new things and doing these like online events. So this is a first for us. So thanks for all those, for Brooke and his team mainly, who have been involved in the planning of this. And thanks to everybody who has come along today, taking the time. As Brooke said, it is being recorded, so it will be made available to everybody. As Brooke is actually my co-chair. I don't know if he said that. He's my co-chair on the Communications and Engagement subgroup, which is one of the groups that was set up following the recommendations from the independent inquiry, and also to look at how we move forward and we transform mental health services in Tayside. For anybody that doesn't know, this group is actually made up from a real cross-section of people and organisations who deliver services right across Tayside. It's for service users, for family members, carers, for people who work in the service. So we do have a really good representation. And at the outset of that group, the group's actually only been set up for a few months, since about September of 2020. We realised we had the opportunity to shape something completely different actually in terms of engaging and moving forward, and that stakeholder involvement and the involvement of communities across Tayside. So we created a group, established that group, and that group has worked really, really hard. From the outset, everybody has played a major role in getting us to where we are today. We took full advantage of the enthusiasm of that group to work really hard, and we gave them tasks and homeworks, and people became our communications engagement champions, our media champions, and truly took that step to work together in a completely different way with us. And that kept the momentum up of a really action-focused piece of work that we were doing. The group has an objective, which is to raise mental health up within our communities, making sure that people hear the stories, they know where that support is, and they have a say. People have a say in what happens next in mental health services in Tayside. So this is the group where this event was born, if you like. Immediately there was unanimous support for an event like this, because people believed it was the time to showcase what was going on in our communities in terms of the services that were being delivered. And this work in the heart of the communities is absolutely vital to what we want to do and what we need to do to achieve improved mental health services across the region. So today's presentations, you'll have seen the programme. They're going to give you a glimpse of the services and supports which are being delivered, so that some of it's from an NHS point of view, some of it is from our communities, our health and social care partnerships, some from third sector partners, some from service users, some from people with lived experience, and importantly, a lot of it is from that really critical grassroots network in our communities where people can go for advice and support closer to home. One of the first objectives of the group was to be right up the middle of the new strategy that Tayside was taking forward in terms of mental health. And they wanted to be really instrumental in how we map out mental health services in Tayside. I believe that the group has achieved that, and that they've achieved it on behalf of the people of Tayside. But we always as a group said that strategy was actually the beginning. Okay, that's the first step, if you like, in terms of how we go forward. And this event is actually just one of the first events that we want to host going forward as well. We know that there's a lot of hard work ahead of us, but today we are marking the launch of that strategy. So it gives me great pleasure to hand over to the Chief Executive of NHS Tayside, Grant Archibald. He is going to launch Living Life Well, a lifelong approach to mental health in Tayside. Thank you.
Well, hello everybody. It's fantastic to hear there are 60 plus people on the call. I'd really like to thank Brooke and Jane for all the hard work that's gone into preparing this, and Kate and colleagues as well. One of the really important things we want to do is to listen and engage with the people we serve. That's our commitment as NHS Tayside, but it should be every public service commitment. And I believe it is around mental health. And what we're really keen to do today is to explain where we've got to as a group, as a formation of all the interested voices in not providing just mental health services, but lifting up the mental well-being of the entire population of Tayside. And that is a daunting task, and it's a huge task. And the reason it is because it's so important. It's important to those with lived experience. It's important to those who are relatives of those people. It's important to all of us. And my commitment when I started in NHS Tayside 2 years ago was mental health was my priority. And we've had the problems of COVID, and it means that we can't meet today. We can't be together today in a room, which I should have much preferred. But let me make it clear as we go through the presentation today, irrespective of the challenges of COVID, many of the voices you will hear from today, too many people than we can bring into a room to speak to you, have worked incredibly hard to try to deliver that aspiration of lifting up the mental well-being of the people in Tayside, improving the services we provide, and importantly, through this document, setting the agenda for where we're going next. So if you wouldn't mind, I'm mindful there might be people on the call who they are new, they've dropped into this as compared to the people that have been involved in the groups led by Jane and by Brooke, and indeed by Kate Bell. So I'm going to take a few minutes of your time, and only a few minutes of your time, to explain where we've come from, importantly where we're going, and importantly still that we're all going there together. So if you would just put the slides up for me, colleagues, then I'll take our colleagues through that. So living life well in the community is an incredibly important statement from this organisation and from everybody in Tayside. And importantly still, it was actually the people on the communications and engagement group that came up with that name. And I think that stresses for me, it says far better than I could have what I wanted to be about and what I would want my part in this service to be about, which is actually making sure that yes, we are there for crisis, and yes, we are there for people who need hospital care, but importantly, we deliver services through our communities, and importantly still, that we look to improve the mental health and well-being of everyone. And that's why you'll see this document is a co-production of so many people who have a stakeholder in that they either provide services or provide housing or provide social work or indeed are those with lived experience. And those voices have been so important to us. They have been so strong. They have been so involved that really what you see today is the product of so many people's work. And I think I'd like to stress that. This is a document that embraces a community and a community's wish, a wish that we would all have, that we improve our mental health and well-being to allow people to live their lives well in their communities. And I think it's really important to understand the journey we've been on, because let us not shy away from it. We've come from a difficult place, and we've come from a place where even when people were working hard, relatives or those with lived experience have felt the services were not what they expected. And they asked us to change, and they reached out to us to say, we need change. Well, that's what we're going to be delivering. That's what we're delivering as a co-production with all the people that are involved in this document, that we all recognise our part to be played and the importance of listening to the voices of the lived experience and their relatives. And I hope that as we go through this today, we'll be able to demonstrate to you that that is the case. And I hope as we go through this, you will recognise the incredible amount of hard work that's gone into this so far, but actually highlights the fact there is so much yet to do. But we're going to do it together, colleagues, and we're going to do a great job. I am so encouraged by the work that's been done so far. I'm so enthusiastic about this being a key priority for us all. And I really think the community want this to be a great success story in Tayside, not least by your involvement today and so many voices being involved so far. So if I could take you to our next slide. Essentially, it's important to briefly describe where we've come from in order to understand where we're going. We had the David Strang report, which was an inquiry into the delivery of healthcare services in NHS Tayside. And it found many things that we needed to do better, that people were working hard, but we need to work hard at the right things. And importantly, when we work hard at things, do they have the outcomes for the people using the service we would expect? And we accepted all 51 of the recommendations that David Strang said, and I accepted them on behalf of the board. And I made a commitment to the whole of the public of Tayside, which was we would listen, we would learn, and we would change. And that became the document and the name of the document of our response to the immediate issues raised by Dr. Strang. And David's going to be coming back soon, speaking to all of you, speaking to ourselves, to assess, have we made the progress he would have expected in terms of those recommendations, where we need to try harder, and also apply an understanding that during this COVID period, it has been difficult. Things that we would have done, we've been less able to do. I should have preferred to have had some town hall meetings with all of you to hear in the round your experiences still and to continue to tap into that rich vein of lived experience. But we will do that when we get the opportunity again. And we have used these webinars, Zoom calls, team calls to try to do that. Kate Bell in particular has played a role in that. But in terms of the 51 recommendations, clearly they are a statement of things that we want to do that were identified by David, and we will do that. But one of the key elements of that was, where was the strategy? Where were we going? What were we trying to be? What were we trying to do? And you will see as we go through this day that all of the things that we've done have been embracing the whole. So we will fix the things, or we will address the things that have been identified as needing quicker action. But the real success in Tayside will be because we listened to the people, we learned and we changed, but also we embraced the bigger concept of how do you keep a population's mental health and well-being in good form for all of their lives, not design only services to deal with those in crisis. And I'm really passionate about that, and I think there's a key element for us to play. You will all be aware of the importance of the vaccination programme and your own behaviours during COVID-19 to deal with a virus, to deal with an illness. Well, mental health prevents so many people from living the lives that they want to. And we need to understand the causal factors for that, and we need to all work together to say, how do we change that? How do we change the lived experience for these people such that they have the opportunity to live their lives well? And that's why we have the document we have. We have a document here, as you'll see from the names and the contributions that we have on it. We have an identification of what people believe and what people want, and where we should be looking and what we should be doing. And as a result, in many years in the health service, 37 plus, this is one of the most passionate, one of the most direct, one of the most encouraging, one of the most challenging documents I've ever seen, because it says we're going to do something very, very significant here for 416,000 people. And that is something that I feel proud to be part of, challenged to be part of, because I will need to play my full role. The people in NHS Tayside are committed to playing their full role, but it really means a whole community working together. And I think if we've seen anything in the last year with the COVID crisis, we know that we can harness populations to work together. And I know from all the work that's gone on in the last 12 months, which I'm going to describe, that people have worked together specifically about mental health with that commitment in mind. So if I click on to my next slide, I'm going to take us round this, if you don't mind. And it's really important that I do that, because I don't want to miss out all the important things that have been done, and all the things that have been happening, and all the product of the engagements that have been ongoing. So we identified a new engagement approach. I want to reach out to you as our population, as the population we serve. I want you to reach into us to describe your experiences, and to make us aware of whether we are being successful or not. I also want you to be involved in the design of how we deliver services. And so we all work together to understand how they meet the needs of the population. But as I say, importantly still, we want to think of all the bigger considerations we have in terms of how do we create an environment, a lived environment for people. So we had 1,300 engagement opportunities. We heard over 600 local stakeholders. There were 24 organisations involved, including Brooks. We created, as Jane said, the Communications and Engagement Group, which has done so much work even in the 6 months that Jane described. We created the Living Life Well website as part of our commitment to making our work as clear as possible, as accessible as possible, and reflecting the new ways of engagement. We created a directory of support so that people knew where to go to when they needed help. And that sounds very basic, but we've done a better job of doing that now. And I hope that anybody that's had to use the directory has found it as useful as I did when I looked at it. There's been the monthly programme of newsletters, this constant drumbeat that we want to have, which is about keeping people informed about what we're doing. I know that you expect us to do our very best. I know you expect us to be highly trained and professional people, but you also want to know what's happening, what progress are we making, where can I be involved, and what will I see in my communities. There's a key point about joint media statements, so that it wasn't just one organisation saying something, but it was all organisations being able to contribute a voice and understand what our messages were. We definitely have common goals. I don't doubt that for a moment. We need to articulate them clearly. We need to understand the component parts for achieving those. And that's what this document gives me. It gives me that assurance that we are in that process. And I hope it gives you that assurance also. We've set ourselves as ambitious plans. I did say that to you, but why should we not be ambitious? Because this is so important. I have spoken to colleagues, spoken recently to Mandy McLaren, to Kate Sainsbury, who have had lived experience of our services, or indeed continue to have them. And what I'm really impressed by is their commitment, their ongoing understanding that we're trying to do something here, and their involvement in that, and their wish for their voices to be heard. And I think that's so important for us, and they expect us to be ambitious in our goals, and so do I. And then we have this event, and I think that, as I say, it would have been great that we could have all been in a large church hall or community hall together hearing this narrative. But in some ways, being able to do it in this way allows people who are more remote from the centres such as Dundee and Perth, etc., to hear the voice, because I'm reaching out to everybody. We cover an area of 3,000 square miles, colleagues, from the Crook of Devon all the way up to the Glens, right the way across the whole of Angus to Montrose and all the way down the coastline again. So it's a huge area we cover, and there's 416,000 people that we rely on to be part of that. And there's a workforce in my own organisation of 13,000 people involved in health, of which about 1,300 are involved in our mental health services. So the scale of this is important to understand. This is going to be difficult. This has challenges in it, but we're good enough, we're strong enough to rise to those challenges. And that's the encouraging thing I hear from the "how did we get here" messages that you see in front of you. If I could take us on to the next slide, I think there's the whole issue of living life well, and you see on the screen all the different people that are involved, or at least some of those, importantly those that have signed up to being co-authors of this document and supporters of this document. This is the beginning. This is the beginning. And it's built us some very strong foundations, and it's taken a year of hard work from an awful lot of you and a lot of us to get us to here. But the real challenge, as ever, when you're doing something is, where are you going next? And the going next is articulated in the document, but I think it's really powerful to understand that everybody wants to play a part in this. Everybody wants this to be successful. Everybody wants experience to be that of the best. But I am very, very keen that we all understand that we're wanting to get to a place where everybody is involved in lifting up the well-being of the population, as well as being able to deal with those unfortunate enough to find themselves in crisis. And the reason I say this is this: I was born in Lochee in Dundee, and if I was living there today, I wouldn't waking up there today saying I'm in mental crisis. It would be a product of lots of things that are going on in my life, about my lived experience, about my housing, about my employability, about how my relatives are, about whether I have family support, about where I'm going, about do I have opportunities to do things. And I think it's really important that we recognize this, that all the different things that cause distress and mental unhealth and unwellness are a product of lived lives lived in complex and modern society, where there are so many influences and so many things that can derail us. And I think one of the great things that I would want us to achieve out of this, let's destigmatize mental health. Mental health is all our business on this call. It's everybody's lives out there. Any one of us could find ourselves in crisis. And therefore, what we need to do is find ways to prevent that, ways to create a society that looks out for each other, ways to create a society that is in a position to provide all the environmental factors in terms of housing and work and opportunity and education and all of these components that contribute to well-being, but also to understand that when people find themselves in crisis, when they find themselves in difficulty, those services will be there as well. So I hope that's been useful. I really would commend all the work that's been done so far. I think those of you on the call that have been involved in this intimately, those voices I've mentioned, Brooke, Jane, Kate, and others, we should be careful about saying proud, because there's so much yet to do. But I think you should all be very proud of yourselves. I look at you and I'm proud of the things that have been achieved. I really think you've done a great job, and I know that we're going to hear from different voices this afternoon with different views, but we are in many ways like an orchestra. They're all different instruments, all committed to the same purpose. And I think that this event today is a key marker, a key indicator, a key benchmark of who we are and what we are about now. The past is the past. The future is ours to design, to own, and to influence. And please, if I can help, I want to be part of that process, and I will be. I would like all of you to be part of that process, and I know you will. And I know that the 416,000 people across Tayside are relying on us relying on us to bring their voices to the fore, to design services to support them, and to create the environment in Tayside that allows people to live their lives well. So thank you very much, and happy to take a couple of questions, although I know we're on a tight time schedule.
I was on mute, sorry, thank you. So we have a couple of questions. There's some questions that you've actually preempted already, Grant. I have a couple of questions. We only have a couple of minutes, and as Brooke said at the beginning, we will actually respond to all questions that come into us, and we'll make them available. The first question that we have that you've answered partially is around the question that's come in is what action is being taken to foster within the wider community a sense of ownership and empowerment around mental health and living well, so that people facing challenges feel connected to and supported by society?
Well, thanks, Jane. That really goes to the heart of what we're about here, because as I said, living life well reflects back to me what I want to hear about mental health, which is that it is, yes, there are crisis services, but more importantly still, that we are designing a society and an infrastructure that supports people before they get into crisis and creates opportunity. And so I know from speaking to my Tayside executive partner colleagues, so that's the council leaders, the council chief executives, and the IJB's, HSCP's, community services, that they're all committed to working together. So if it's about housing, if it's about social work, if it's about education, if it's about opportunity, if it's about lived lives, if it's about supportive infrastructure, if it's about myself and Emma Fletcher and public health reaching out and giving messages and support, then we're going to do all of that. So I would hope, and I am certainly committed to, the fact that colleagues and friends out in the communities will start to see the impact of that approach. It will take time because that's a longer piece of work, but it really brings me back to where I want to be. I want to be in an environment where people live their lives well, and only those few who really need to approach crisis or support services have to do that and know that they're there for them. But let's design a way of living and working together and being together that's about mental well-being rather than mental ill health.
Sorry, thanks. So one final question. We've got time for one more, and it's actually about staff, about mental health staff. I know that there are a few members of staff that have joined the event today, and how will you ensure that staff will work in a mentally healthy environment and feel their well-being is a priority for NHS Tayside?
Well, if I might just say something about the staff and on behalf of the staff, when I came here, I was struck by the fact that we had 13,000 people so committed, so dedicated to trying to provide the best services possible. Now, what we need to do is accept at times that even with our best intentions, things do not turn out the way we wanted them to. And for any family, that's incredibly challenging to hear and incredibly difficult to deal with. And that's why it's so important that we listen and we learn and we change, because nobody, I think, doubts our hard work. Nobody doubts our commitment. Nobody doubts that people that give their lives to working in LDAU and other services are committed to doing the very best for some of the most requiring of patients that we might ever engage with. And their strength and their passion for that is something I'm very proud of. But it's difficult when people like me come along and say we need to go again, we need to improve further. But we're going to do that, and the staff have listened to that message, but importantly still, we know we need to look after our staff as well. So as part of the whole engagement process, we're listening to staff as part of our listening to everyone. I want them to feel fully involved in the design of where we're going, because I think if you own where you're going next, you feel far better involved in it. And I think in terms of their own mental well-being, the real challenge, I think, is they have very, very difficult jobs. And therefore myself, through partnership working, which in this context, I mean working with our trade union colleagues, we want to put an arm around the whole organisation and say, we are a healthy workplace, we are a caring workplace, we are an understanding workplace. And some of the very specific things we've done have been about rest and rehab rooms for people who have been working hard shifts as we work through COVID and providing them with environments to get a break from that. But we have a whole lot of policies inside NHS Tayside that are about supporting staff. And what I need to make sure is that they're delivered for them, and that I listen to staff voices as I listen to patients' voices, as I listen to the public's voices. I think COVID-19 has posed the most remarkable challenge the health service has ever faced. I would hope anyone on this call would think NHS Tayside has risen to that. I think that in terms of, it's obvious to people that dealing with the patients who have COVID is something that they might be applauded for. But please remember, colleagues, that throughout that period, mental health services were still running, the wards were still operating, people were still coming in and trying to provide the best services. And in the community, the same story was true about engagement and looking after patients. So we actually had to do both. And I think it's been a remarkable effort. But we listen to our staff because their good work and our work with them will deliver the services that I want us to deliver for our population. And if I might just finally, Brooke, because I'm mindful of time, it's quite humbling to be part of this call, because there are lots of people on this call who I know who have so much more investment through their lived life experiences in mental health and their experience in mental health services. I want to reach out to them and say, I can't fully empathise, but I want to. I'm here to listen and learn and change with you. But living life well is our chance. This is our opportunity. You've created it. I think you've done a remarkable job. I look forward to the rest of your afternoon. And I do hope that in any engagement you have with us, you will understand our commitment is to you, to the people we serve, and to doing the best job possible. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Grant, for that. Just to reiterate for anyone who's joined the call, like Jane said, we did receive a lot of questions in advance, and because we've got almost 80 people here today, we're getting a lot of questions streaming in. So whilst we won't be able to answer them all today, there's been a commitment made that we will be able to get answers to everyone after. So if I could ask the people from the corner who are up next to get ready while I just finish off with some housekeeping. I want to show the agenda quickly before we move on. Next up, we've got the coroner. After that, we've got Making Recovery Real. After that, we've got Kate Bell from NHS Tayside, who's the Director of Mental Health. After that, we have Feeling Strong and CAMHS, then Perth and Health and Social Care Partnership, and then we have a contribution from the Stakeholder Participation Group as well. Just in case anyone can't see, because it's obscured by my face on the screen. So yes, are the people from the coroner here?
Yes.
Perfect. In that case, I'll allow you to introduce yourself and pop up your presentation.
My colleagues, I think, is going to be joining me shortly. Hi, my name's Gary Finlayson from the Coroner Health and Wellbeing Service in Dundee. And yeah, we're delighted that we can be here today in terms of the whole communication engagement strategy that we were a part of, in terms of contributing to that. And my colleague Ria Long, who will be along shortly, she's our Health Improvement Officer, and she'll be talking a little bit later on about some of the work that she's been undertaking as part of the coroner. So, Brooke, do you just want me to press ahead with the presentation?
Yeah, if you just go on ahead, that's perfect.
Okay, so Brooke, you can hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay. So yeah, as I said earlier on, we're delighted to be part of this this event today. And as the Chief Executive said earlier on, this is the beginning of the journey, and we all recognise that we are committed to mental health and well-being in our population, and the corner as a young person service will hopefully contribute to that journey. So for those of you who don't know what the corner is, we are a specifically health and well-being service for young people, and we support young people up to the age of from 11 to 19. But if somebody's vulnerable, if a young person has been looked after care, or there's just real risk to them, we will support them up till they're 25. The corner is an NHS Tayside service that's funded through the Dundee Health Social Care Partnership. And pre-COVID, our normal drop-in open hours were 2 to 6, Monday to Friday, and Saturday 1 until 4. So we try to be as flexible as we can in terms of accommodating more of our cohort, our age group, so we can accommodate them after school and ease the bottleneck and ensure that all young people that want to come to the corner can get support. So fundamentally, the corner aims to work in terms of the principles reflected within the UN Convention on the Rights of the Child. In relation to how the corner works in relation to GIRFEC, in terms of the principles and values through GIRFEC that's come out of the UN Convention on the Rights of the Child, again, that helps us and allows us to reflect on our practice on a daily basis, to always remember that the work that we do is to benefit young people of Dundee, and we'll always remember that. And through that, the corner ultimately wants to reduce and help redress the inequalities that are experienced by young people, and we do that through offering them support to develop skills, confidence, and ultimately to build resilience and to enable young people to move forward and make positive choices in their lives. So within, how do we do that? Well, what we aim to do is when a young person attends our service, we provide a holistic assessment. So we try and understand and explore the social needs of that young person. What are their sexual health needs? What's their family situation? What's their friendship group like? What's their education like? Is there things going on within school that's impacting on their mental well-being? How are things within their family? How's their physical health? So this consultation really allows us to gauge and get a really good picture of a young person and understanding their needs, their risks and their vulnerability, in order for that young person to feel that they're getting the right service that they need at the right time. So as we're a young person service, not everybody watching today will be aware of where the corner is located. So I've got a nice picture of our building with the sun out. We're located at Shore Terrace, which is just beyond the Caird Hall and just right across from Slessor Gardens. And we feel there was a lot of discussion about where the corner was located, but actually we want to celebrate young people being at the very heart of the new waterfront development. So, the Slessor Gardens and all these new buildings coming up, and to not shy away that young people do have issues and wants and concerns, but also the chance to live a positive life. So we're actually really pleased that we're in such a vibrant location that young people will hopefully continue to join us on our journey as well. We do recognise that COVID-19 has had an impact on all of us and all service provision. So we've had to understand the challenges that are now faced by the corner as a service, as part of NHS Tayside and Dundee Health Social Care Partnership, that we had to rethink how we engage with young people, particularly in the last 12 months when our service has not been closed, but our drop-in service has been closed. So we've had to think about how do we continue to engage with young people in a way that's effective as a service. So we've had to adapt the provision that we have, and I'll come on to that in a slide or two. But it was essential in terms of, this whole day in effect is about developing partnership work and about co-producing. So the corner is constantly trying to develop partnerships, and this will continue going forward. But what COVID has done, it's allowed us to look at new ways of thinking, to develop new partnerships that may not necessarily have existed before, and to drive forward change and innovation. As a result of COVID, and as service changes have had to be thought about more clearly and more focused, we have been able to bring forward ideas that might have not happened necessarily. So out of all the positives that may happen as a result of COVID, partnership work and driving forward change and innovation has been absolutely essential for the corner to keep moving forward. And through our online approach and the use of Teams and Zoom meetings and all these types of things, we've actually been able to look at clever ways to expand the scope of our outreach work in communities and also sexual health provision. So these are some of the service provisions that we've had to look at and hopefully allow us to maintain and sustain and develop the service over the next 12-18 months. So the corner offers an emotional well-being support service, and as you can see, there are a number of different aspects of support that's offered. So we offer crisis support. So any young person that may be in a situation where there's immediate risk, again, we're a safe place to come or to call or to contact. And that goes from, falling out with parents and potentially being at risk of homelessness, or to the more serious side where a young person may be having thoughts of suicide or their real concerns in terms of their well-being and their welfare. We offer a support use service, which is short-term emotional support. So not quite the need of counselling, but not quite the need of just needing to come in and sit and listen. So, and that's generally planned work and a planned approach over a number of weeks with a young person who's an equal part of the journey. So it's not the corner staff being experts and the young people just being there to get a service. We see this as an equal process and it's a shared journey with that young person. Really important that we offer that practical support and being able to link in with other services. So it can make such a massive difference if all of us can just put in that extra effort or go that extra mile, just to ensure that if we can't support a young person, then actually let's do what we can to make sure we can get you linked in to the right support at the right time in a way that's helpful and beneficial for that young person. And that involves not just, it could be social work, it could be CAMHS services, it could be education, but also it's really important to have parents and carers involved in the young person's well-being as well. And although the corner is a confidential service, and we offer that service, when there is a need to share information that is appropriate, then we will do so, and with the right person or the right people and the right services involved, but also the young person being part of that as well, so they're aware of what's being discussed. And we also have an option and access to the listening service, which is just a person-centered, asset-based short-term approach. And there's future plans to develop this further with the chaplaincy service within NHS Tayside. So we're really excited about this potential work coming up. And finally, we have a counselling service that provides support for young people experiencing mild to moderate health and well-being issues. So hopefully you'll see from the different aspects of support that's offered in terms of health and well-being or emotional well-being support that we have hopefully services in place that cater for most young people's needs. And if a young person is out with the scope of what the corner can offer, as I say, it's really important for us to provide that link into GP services, etc. So the corner also has a health promotion and assertive outreach programme. So the aim is to, going on the previous slides in relation to COVID, how do we target hard to reach and vulnerable groups across the city, across Dundee? And that's done in a number of different ways, but it's about building relationships with services, and the corner we're constantly building relationships with services, particularly those with young people who are at risk, or there are particular vulnerabilities, or more generally at risk as a population of young people. And we aim to deliver a range of training to professionals and community groups. That could be from staff here deliver Scottish mental health first aid young people's training, to awareness raising about young people's issues, but ultimately want to build capacity for young people, parents and carers and professionals across communities to be able to build resilience. The resilient communities tend to be more mentally healthy communities, and ultimately the corner wants to play its part in that. And as I say, at the top, partnership work is key to the corner. And so examples are, so CAMHS, so we're currently doing some partnership with CAMHS and Support and Mind Scotland to deliver a 6-week programme called Your Resilience, and it's about building resilience in young people who are possibly at the threshold of their mental well-being declining. So we're excited about that programme moving forward. And local services such as Action for Children, Scottish Refugee Council, and the Dundee Safe Zone Bus, which is a partnership with the Health and Social Care Partnership, Tayside Council and Alcohol, Explore Dundee, and other services and agencies that just get involved to provide a service for people that may find it hard to approach and engage with services within a particular base or facility. So if anybody's, has any concerns, or they're feeling a bit vulnerable themselves, or they know a vulnerable young person or a vulnerable adult, the bus tends to be in Court Street on a Friday night, and up in Lochee around Farm Foods car park area on a Saturday. Again, just you may have seen the big the bus, yellow bus going around. If not, it's certainly worth a visit. So I've added sexual health provision here because the corner provides a large sexual health service, but the reason it's in here because by discussing sexual health with a young person, there's a significant amount of young people that do actually get support for their emotional well-being as a result of attending for a service. So again, we need to think in terms of the holistic assessment we offer, that things may get disclosed, there may be exploitation, there may be coerced into having risk-taking behaviour in relation to sexual activity, there may be alcohol, there may be drugs concerns, there may be family issues, there may be self-esteem, confidence issues. So the end result is that a young person is attending for a sexual health service, but actually emotional health, a lot of the times, is the reason why they're coming for that service. So while we're here, we try to capture and help enable them to protect themselves or just to feel safer. And we do that by offering a contraception service. We offer STI screening, so sexually transmitted infection testing. We also offer pregnancy testing and condoms and condom demonstrations. And as I said previously, that this is part of a holistic consultation that can take 20 minutes, sometimes half an hour. So it's a really thorough assessment just to ensure that we can capture all of these things that might be missed by just simply not asking the questions. And we need to assess and determine the need and risk. So why is that young person accessing the contraception? Why are they coming in for the service? So it enables us to also reach vulnerable young people, those hard to reach young people, but also people living in rural areas or may not be able to access the corner for contraception. So as a result of adapting our service delivery, we are now in a position to post contraception and post pregnancy test kits out to young people, either at their home or a convenient, safe place for them to be able to access that service. As best as possible, we always think as a service, how do we address and help reduce health inequalities that young people experience? And this is one way to do that. And future planning is to develop an STI postal testing kit service, a no-talk testing service for young people who may not have anything in particular going on in their life, so it can be a quick service they can get, and also future treatment for STIs, particularly uncomplicated chlamydia. We want to try and reduce the journey for a young person. The more we can offer, the less a young person has to move from service to service to service, and that's really important for the corner staff team as a whole. So we also now have a digital content officer now in post, and the digital content officer really targets young people through social media. So they develop our Facebook, our Instagram, and our Twitter pages to help us engage more with young people, to get more feedback from young people, and to provide options for young people to access the corner staff directly by asking questions or just want to find out things. And through that, it's a really efficient way for young people to contact the corner to discuss things such as their emotional well-being. And sometimes that initial conversation can be just enough to give them peace of mind, to enable them to understand their feelings and emotions, and to access the right support if any of that support is then required. We also have our updated website. I think once you leave here today, if you can visit the corner website, that would be great. And within that, we have newly updated content and additional features. So we now, again, about change and innovation, we are now at the position to offer an online booking system, an appointment booking system where a staff member will then contact that young person at a time that is suitable for them. We have our online chat function, and we have a translate button, which is really important for the corner in terms of the work the corner does with the Scottish Refugee Council and humanitarian team to be able to develop shared learning and allow young people from really anywhere to click on the translate button to get the information they need that might be otherwise they might not be able to access. And we're very thankful that to the Scottish Refugee Council and the carers of Dundee that they've been able to contribute to those particular pages within the corner website. So we're really thankful for that. And a couple of messages just at the end before I move on to Ria here. It's really important for young people. So if you're supporting any young people, or pass on a message to young people that we're still open. Although we're still only seeing appointments only just now, we are still open, and you can book an appointment by either phone, email, through the corner website, speaking with us directly through our live chat or our Near Me confidential video chat service through NHS Scotland, or our social media pages at the bottom. And the link for the Near Me or Attend Anywhere as it's called, any young person just has to click onto that link, and then you'll go directly into the corner waiting room, and they can chat face to face, or they can choose to chat without the video option and just chat to us through audio. So this is a virtual drop-in that any young person can access at any time. So if you do work with any young people watching, and you do have any kind of concerns or just want to have a chat, please click onto that link. Okay, so I'm just going to pass over to my colleague now. How are we doing for time, Brooke?
We're doing okay, actually, but we have a couple of questions. So is it okay if we ask some questions, actually?
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
Perfect. So we have a question from Karen, who's asking about is there equivalent services in Perth and Kinross and Angus that you're aware of? Because she wants to know about equality of access to services across NHS Tayside. And before quickly you answer that, Gary, if anyone has any questions specifically for the corner just now, please feel free to use the Q&A function below, and we'll make sure that we get you an answer.
Well, certainly in terms of young people 16 and over, there are services across Tayside. And I'm not going to say the corner is unique as a service to Dundee, but in terms of the setup of the corner was and still is quite unique and innovative as a service. And there are services such as Penumbra, for example, who provide range of support around Tayside. There is Feeling Strong. Sorry, there are. I'm trying to think of the service in Scott Street in Perth and Angus. I'm not exactly sure in terms of Angus, but there are a number of organisations, and they can be accessed through either through Dundee Voluntary Action or Angus Voluntary Action. But in terms of equity and accessibility to the corner, although this is a service that's based in Dundee, we don't really shut the door on anybody from anywhere. So if somebody was from Angus or Perth or Fife or further afield, if they came into a drop-in service once we begin to reopen, then they won't be turned away, and we will give them a service to ensure that we can meet their needs at that particular time. We always need to remember that a young person has access to our service for support, and ethically it would be, and as a service we just simply wouldn't turn any young person away. So and as I say, if we can't support them, we would do our best to link them in with the service, be it in Angus or Perth or wider afield.
Thank you very much for answering that, Gary. Let me just check to see if we have any more questions. We have a question from Gail, who's asking, as an individual, what can I do to help?
Oh, in terms of the corner, or just in general?
I think in terms of supporting the corner, yes.
I don't know whether that's financially or a volunteer or anything like that, but as I say, the corner is funded through the Dundee Health Social Care Partnership, and we do appreciate any person that does want to offer support to the corner. We are looking into our volunteer policy just now. We do recognise that volunteers provide a really rich role in enabling services to function. So potential volunteering opportunities in the future would be great for the corner, and just really getting the message out that the corner is here. During COVID, we have had to restrict our community-based outreach, so getting the message out, the corner is here. We are supporting young people. We are still providing the services that we did before, just in a slightly different way. So yeah, getting the message out would be brilliant.
Perfect, thank you so much, and thank you for your presentation and telling us a little bit about what you're doing.
Yeah, so I've just got Ray is just going to spend just a couple of minutes just on our wellbeing boxes. Is that okay?
I'm afraid Ray is not here at the moment. I think she's dropped off, so we'll have to move on.
Okay, so cool. I'll just do 1 minute then. Sorry, I'm being a pain. Yeah, so
it's okay.
So we've got wellbeing boxes that are being distributed across the city just now, and the wellbeing boxes are through. Oops, sorry. Yeah, the idea behind the wellbeing boxes was that it was really organised after a young schoolboy unfortunately took his own life, and his parents donated monies from the funeral to the corner, and so as a result, the Youth Inquiry Service in Dumfries had a similar type of wellbeing box that they distributed to young people. So the corner took on the opportunity and secured funding to develop a wellbeing box for young people, and so we developed 1,000 boxes available for young carers across Dundee, as well as vulnerable groups and interested young people who may be in a position where they would benefit from a wellbeing box. So and there's a link on the website to be able to access a wellbeing box. So there's a referral on the website to access a wellbeing box. And as you can see by the picture, there's lots of little things there that help, be it a little elastic band. We've got a fidget toy, affirmation cards, hugging a bug, mindfulness colouring book. So just little things that enable a young person to feel better about their situation, and a couple of little bits of feedback. So the box is really helpful. It could help a lot of other young people and help them with their mental health and lift everyone's mood. The box is fantastic. The box is amazing. I thank you so much. So I just wanted to, sorry, I went over time, but I think it was important to get our wellbeing boxes in there. And if anybody is interested, just access the website, download the application referral form, and we can get that to you.
Awesome, thank you very much. Okay. In that case, could I ask the people from Dundee Volunteer and Voluntary Action to get set up? And Gary, if you could stop sharing your presentation. Thank you. So yeah, up next is the team behind Making Recovery Real at Dundee Volunteer and Voluntary Action, and they'll be able to tell you a little bit more about what they do. Louise, you're here. You're muted.
That has been the year-long word of everybody, hasn't it, this year? You're on mute, you're on mute. I'm not sure where Rachel and Michelle R, are you here? I don't have you guys.
I'm here.
Oh, here. Are you on video?
I'm just trying to, because I'm sharing my screen, hold on.
Take your time.
Yeah, I'm here too. I just need to get my video enabled.
Technology at its finest.
Right, there we go. Hold
Okay.
on. Problem was I couldn't see the start from beginning button.
Rachel, are you here?
Yep.
Great.
I think Brooke might need to enable my video.
Brooke, have you got that?
Ah, there we go. There we go.
Fab. Brooke, are we good to go?
Yes, by all means, take it away.
Thank you. So hi everybody, good afternoon. Thank you for coming along to the event today and welcome to our presentation on Making Recovery Real in Dundee. My name is Louise Janetta. As you can see, I am the Mental Health Network Coordinator. And I have with me Michelle Donoghue, our Peer Recovery Development Worker,
Hello.
and Rachel Jackson. If you want to say hello when your name pops up, and Rachel Jackson, even our Communications Worker. We hope to enlighten you today on all things Making Recovery Real in Dundee and give a deeper insight into the activities involved within the project and across the partnership. You ready, Michelle? So, Making Recovery Real sits within the Mental Health and Substance Use Involvement and Engagement team within DVVA, Dundee Volunteer and Voluntary Action. Our funding predominantly comes from the Dundee Health and Social Care Partnership. And within our team, we have 5 main strands of work, which include Dundee Healthy Minds, Making Recovery Real, of course, the Mental Wealth Academy, the Peer Recovery Substance Use, and third sector networks and support. Our vision as a team is that people with mental health or substance use issues and third sector organisations will be equal and expert partners in making Dundee a city of recovery. We believe that people with mental health challenges or substance use issues should be at the very centre of their own recovery. And we have the voices of lived experience, recovery, co-design and production, and peer support as part of our ongoing values and visions. Are you ready to move on, Michelle?
Go.
So, to go back to the very beginning, Making Recovery Real started in 2015, bringing together people with lived experience and organisations to identify and prioritise what should happen to support mental health, wellbeing and recovery. Making Recovery Real has put people with lived experience right at the centre and very heart of decision making, service design and practice development. Change is happening at all levels for individuals, colleagues, peers and amongst wider teams within the organisations and in the wider environment. This partnership came together to promote and advance mental health recovery in Dundee and continues to do so throughout the city. If you're ready to move on.
I did.
Yeah. Oh, sorry.
Sorry.
No, you haven't. So, yeah, sorry about that. It's because I don't have control of the slides. So, Making Recovery Real in Dundee brings together public and third sector partnerships. We advocate and practice co-production, which is really important to us, and it lies at the heart, the very, very heart of Making Recovery Real. This has increased, hopefully, and this has resulted rather in an increased focus and investment in engagement, recovery, story sharing, and peer recovery approaches. The initiative is now embedded within the city and actually is recognised within the city plan and Dundee mental health and wellbeing strategies. We co-produce with many organisations across the sector, and these are, at the moment include obviously the Scottish Recovery Network, Penumbra, Wellbeing Works, CAMHS, DIAS, and of course the Haven. And we wouldn't be anywhere without these guys, and we strongly do co-production. If you move on, Michelle. So through this partnership working, here are just a short list of some of the co-produced activities Making Recovery Real has achieved to date. So sharing and collecting recovery stories from over 40 people in Dundee, producing a film, which hopefully you'll see at some point, Recovery Stories, where 18 local people have shared their personal stories of recovery. We've developed and share online resources to support discussions of the films and encourage wider story sharing. We develop and deliver peer-to-peer training using the peer-to-peer vocational training resource developed by Scottish Recovery Network through a European project. We invest in peer support in Dundee from Article 15 monies, and we have the recruitment of our peer recovery development worker, Michelle, who will go on after I've introduced everything to elaborate far more on the activities than I can ever do. And Making Recovery Real in Dundee, a review with the Scottish Recovery Network. So lots of activities that Michelle will go into greater detail with, and you can ask questions of later. So not to take my word for it, here are some of the words from our partners who have brought lots of interesting things to the project. We meet on a regular basis and we have a strategic point of view from across the city. So as we all embark on our own journeys of recovery from the impact of COVID, I'm happy that we're able to work alongside Making Recovery Real partners to share experiences and resources so that we can all get back to doing what we are best at doing. Wellbeing Works, thanks Wendy if you're here, has benefited directly from involvement with Making Recovery Real. We're able to access funding to create a new team of peer workers who can use their own experience of mental health challenges to help others on their journey. So, some of the words, thank you so much for that. And now I'm going to pass over to Michelle and Rachel, who will go into far more depth and detail about the work, the fabulous work done with Making Recovery Real across the city. Thanks, Michelle.
Thank you, Louise. So my role within Recovery Real is a peer recovery development worker. I've been in post for about 1.5 years. One of my main kind of roles within that is the peer recovery network. The network had been kind of established before I started, but haven't really kind of set what goals and outcomes they wanted to achieve as a network. So one of our first kind of tasks, it was, around co-production, asking the current membership what they would like and how do we move forward. So from that, we had an afternoon of a co-design event, asking the membership what they wanted and what they wanted to achieve. The membership for the Peer Recovery Network is people who have lived experience of mental health issues who are in an informal, voluntary or paid peer support role. People that are current members have came through either the community mental health team, they might have came through some of our partner organisations, some of them aren't quite in voluntary roles yet, but hoping to. So from the Peer Recovery Network, we kind of identified from the co-design event our main objectives and for the Peer Recovery Network. So from that, they wanted to look at personal development and support. It's an involvement and progression route for people that either want to get into peer support, want to use their lived experience and how they help others. And so we provide like learning opportunities for that and to help them build their confidence and networking abilities. Quite a few of the networks members are interested in doing a facilitation role. So kind of going from participating in an event to then slowly becoming more active, more involved, helping the lead facilitators engage in conversation. What we do. One of the most passionate areas that they wanted to look at also was raising awareness and communication, was to reduce the stigma and discrimination around mental health and people with mental health, and how we become, be inclusive and transparent in the work that we do. How do we work with our partners across the board? How do we share resources to raise awareness and communication? There's quite a lot in Dundee that's going on, but how do we join it up together, and what role does the network have to play in that? What role does peer support have to play in that? And we'll talk about some of the work we've done over the last year to help do this. It's again a great opportunity to get network members involved, to take a strengths-based approach finding out what everyone is good at and using that and utilising that and sharing our experiences with each other. For example, before lockdown, we had time to talk day and we were out in the community, and we'll tell you how we've adapted that. So we want to kind of influence the mental health agenda in Dundee. You know, it has been negative and there's a lot of good work going out there, and we want to help shift that balance, do the work that we do through making recovery real, and, you know, taking a co-production approach, using the voices of lived experience to do that. We wanted to increase our network activity, again, as I said, in partnership working, and you'll see examples of that throughout our presentation with myself and Rachel and the work that we've been doing. And, you know, a lot of the network members were also passionate about, you know, what we do and how we work within schools and young people. Is there an opportunity, generational work, you know, to give young people hope if they have had mental health difficulties, that actually they can recover, or they can be on a journey and live a fulfilled life, whether they've had a diagnosis or not had a diagnosis. So we've got quite a lot that we got out of this co-design event and where we wanted to achieve, you know, and what the members wanted to achieve through. So we'd only kind of had that in December, and then 3 months later we went into lockdown. So thankfully we've adapted quite quickly, and this is just some of the ways that we've kind of used to communicate with the network, through regular telephone and email check-ins, using like online platforms such as Slack, you know, and Zoom, being able to use things like Dropbox, have a video newsletter, Teams, and Attend Anywhere. From following the co-design report, we had set up subgroups, and so this allowed us to continue some of that work around awareness raising, marketing, social as well, using all these kind of tools that we could. When we hit COVID last year, you know, we've got a number of paid peer workers within our network, and with Louise, Wellbeing Works, Penumbra and CAMHS, we came together to kind of think about how we could utilise the peer support workers. You know, a lot of people were struggling with their mental health, and we knew that, and how did we able to adapt to be able to offer something through COVID and through the lockdown. So an idea that we had turned into reality 6 weeks later, with the great partnership working that we had, and being able to come together. You know, we managed to get funding for mobile phones for some of the staff, leaflets, as you'll see here, Rachel designed. We managed to take benefit from the psychological first aid training. We had resource packs for the peer workers, and then we used like a shared drive and Dropbox and Teams. At some point we were offering 22 weekly check-ins, you know, as well as taking referrals from other agencies, and you know, it was a good way to kind of, one, keep all us connected, because the peer support network, the peer recovery network, have all got lived experience of mental health, and being in their jobs keeps them well, you know, and being able to still use their skills in a way. And they were so quick to adapt, and I really give them credit for shifting from doing face-to-face to phone peer support. It wasn't easy for them, but they embraced it, and the partnership embraced it as well. So one of you may have seen or not seen, we've been increasing our social media presence over the last year, but specifically probably more so over the last 6 months. And one of our main you know, areas of work within Making Recovery Real is recovery conversation, and that was one of the original outcomes when they joined back in 2015, and they asked people what they wanted to help them in their mental health journey, and conversations to normalise mental health issues. So we have started actually from Scottish Recovery Network with their successful conversation cafes. On the back of that, we wanted to duplicate that in our area, and you know, and take that model that's successful for them and have our model. So we ran our first one in February, And we had our conversation cafe. We talked about our work. It's an opportunity for us to information share about what we do with Making Recovery Real, with Dundee Healthy Minds. And then we went off into discussions, and this year's theme was the power of small. So it was like, what small thing can you do? What small thing can we do? And we get some great conversations, and, you know, just that space to talk about mental health, and, you know, that people might not get. And we came back with wonderful ideas, and we actually did it with our staff team as well, you know, and we thought about how can we have a staff lunch together, you know, and it was quite good, lots of good feedback from that. Making Recovery Real is also part of another partnership called Say Something Dundee, and it's about building compassionate communities. It's about having conversations around death, dying, loss and grief. And that's a partnership with Funeral Link, our older persons development worker, Dundee Uni, and the palliative care for Scotland, the True Canter project it's called. So we've recently held a conversation cafe on these kind of themes, and to ask people around what, you know, what support would they like, you know, for bereavement. You know, it's a taboo subject. People don't like talking about it, and it's something that's, you know, we're all being you know, affected by through COVID. So we got some great ideas from that and how we move forward with Say Something Dundee. Another part of things that we do, we've had a couple of Facebook Lives or recorded chats where we kind of look at discussions and topics around mental health. So we've had myself and Alison from Wellbeing Works talking about bereavement. We've had a chat even from NHS Tayside about alcohol brief interventions as part of Alcohol Awareness Week. Our aim behind these is connection. It's being able to connect with people, normalise the conversations, give people hope and meaning, and show, you know, that there is help available out there as well. So I'm going to pass you to Rachel, and you can chat, Rachel.
So I'm Rachel, and I'm the communications worker with the mental health team, but I work largely and pretty closely with Making Recovery Real. As Michelle was saying, we've really tried to like increase our online activities, just because we've found it to be beneficial last year, and also because of COVID as well. One of the main activities that we have developed is 2 podcast series. We kind of developed these to fulfill some outcomes, some Making Recovery Real outcomes, such as like spreading awareness of mental health and well-being, of what support's available, as well as actually providing communications and learning opportunities for network members and volunteers. So one of our podcast series, which is a mini series, is Making Recovery Real Talks To. This involves Michelle and a volunteer have been talking to different professionals that are involved in sort of the strategic mental health stuff going on in Dundee. So the aim of that is to kind of bridge the gap between Dundee mental health and wellbeing strategies and the local community, to try and give that another platform and make it even more kind of accessible as well. So that work has been carried out by Michelle and a volunteer with lived experience who have been interviewing these people. So far we have episodes with NHS Tayside Public Health Team, Technology Enabled Care in Dundee, and with the Community Health Inequalities Manager. And so far we have 2 of these podcast episodes published, and another one coming out soon, which is the Mental Health Inequalities one. The other series that we have planned is a main series, which is the Making Recovery Real podcast. This series basically is led by myself and a volunteer with lived experience, and we interview guests who have a role in mental health support or have lived experience themselves. And the aim of this is to kind of raise awareness of mental health and wellbeing in general, of support that's available, and provide hope for people, and just play a part in shifting the balance of the mental health agenda in Dundee. So far, the episodes for this we have are about peer support, and suicide prevention, and we're hoping to release them very soon. As I was saying, this series is made by myself and a volunteer with lived experience, so the series has largely a lived experience voice. And again, that's to kind of achieve the sort of aims of making recovery real, with like providing learning opportunities for these network members to learn new skills, as well as actually get these sort of communications out. So that's one main activity that we've been doing. Another large part of our work is awareness day raising. We filmed, as Michelle was saying last year, we took part in Time to Talk Day, which was a physical event in February, I think it was. And we had a physical event in multiple places in Dundee, and as well as some online activity and promotion around this. And we found that really beneficial to spread awareness of mental health in Dundee, get other partners on board, and give volunteers and network members an opportunity to get involved in some activities. So we decided to do this online and actually take part in quite a few more different awareness days. Again, these raise awareness of mental health, provide some learning opportunities for network members, and so we sort of took part in various mental health awareness days, such as Mental Health Awareness Week, Good Death Week, and World Suicide Prevention Day. To do this, we gathered a collection of these dates, and we then had a sort of staff planning session to generate ideas on what we could do, and then we had a meeting with both Making Recovery Real network members and Dundee Healthy Minds network members to generate more ideas and to see what they would like to do and use their skills as well. So for instance, for Mental Health Awareness Week last year, that was identified as one of the most important events. And we planned a week's worth of activities with our network members. So this involved things such as Kindness Challenge online campaign, a pre-recorded chat with Dundee Healthy Minds Network and Funeral Link, just chatting about grief and mental health. We had a team chat about what keeps us well, and we also had an online event which was a craft afternoon, and that kind of utilised both network members from both projects, and because they were both quite arts and crafty people, and then they led the session, and then we had just other service users and members of the public attend. So we had that, as well as posting general sort of mental health and wellbeing articles throughout the week. Another one we took part in was World Suicide Prevention Day. Again, we created a week's worth of online events, shared useful helplines and phone lines throughout the week. A video made by Dundee Healthy Minds Network about making safety plans, and we created a sort of digital community wall, because we found physical community walls were quite beneficial in the past to get people's ideas and what they do to keep themselves well. And this time we used it digitally online posted to our Facebook page, and that's where people could share their own sort of messages of hope. And again, as well as that, we shared sort of information about mental health and suicide prevention type apps as well. And we also got volunteers and network members involved by researching about mental health around the world, as that was actually the theme of the World Suicide Prevention Day. So that also gave them a kind of opportunity to get involved. We also took part in Good Death Week, and that was obviously around mental health and bereavement. And we again created a week's programme of events. We found that from particularly Mental Health Awareness Week, having an online event was quite beneficial. So we created an in memory of sort of Facebook event, and that was where anyone from Dundee, the community, could share memories, basically, and anonymous messages and stuff. So that again kind of reinforced the sort of recovery stories and sharing tips and things. And again, just reinforcing what support's available through helplines and support services. And again, we had another video chat type thing with Michelle talking to a peer development worker from Wellbeing Works about grief and bereavement and mental health as well. And yeah, again, just sharing more information about mental health and bereavement, because we just found sharing information and helplines and tips and getting other people to share them, that's kind of the best way to get these sorts of information and resources around, kind of thing. So yeah, it's been really busy with all the different awareness days and weeks we've been doing.
Okay. In which we hope to continue for the rest of this year, so keep an eye out on our Facebook. Moving forward, we are looking at developing our courses and training around peer support for our network members. So currently already in partnership with NHS Tayside, the community mental health team, peer recovery workers, and a member of Dundee City Council's literacies team deliver peer-to-peer. And we're also a way to start a Living E-Emotions course, which was developed by the same partnership as peer-to-peer with Scottish Recovery Network, and it's an 8-week course around story sharing. So it's someone with lived experience of mental health issues, looking at their recovery and their recovery journey and how they use that as an acceptance of self, in the hope that they'll go on to do the peer-to-peer to learn then how to use their story to help others. We're also part of, with a colleague from the substance use team, hopefully going to be delivering Let's End Stigma and Discrimination training around mental health and substance use. And we're also part of a suicide prevention training subgroup, because we are very much aware that there's peer support workers and volunteers who are working over the last year who need a bit of extra training. So we're part of a subgroup working group from the Living Life Well communications engagement group. We're part of that, looking at how we deliver online training as partnership across Tayside, but also more specifically in Dundee. So we've got a lot of still to go ahead in the involvement and progression route that we're doing for our network members, and how we develop more peer support opportunities going forward, and to just keep building on the great partnerships that we have as Making Recovery Real moving forward, and feeding into the other areas of work we do as a mental health and substance use involvement and engagement team as well. Louise, I don't know if there's...
So, is that everything? Yeah.
Details. Yes.
So thank you so much for giving us this airtime to enlighten you, hopefully, on the Making Recovery Real in Dundee network and information. You will see our details are there. Should anybody need any more information or anything, just please feel free to contact one of us and we'll try and get back to you. But yeah, thank you so much for letting us come along, and I hope that that was interesting for you and answered maybe some of the questions you have in your head about Making Recovery Real.
You can find us on Facebook at MRR Dundee, and you will also find Say Something Dundee on Facebook. And we do have the mental health web pages on the DVVA website, where you will find links to like our Anchor podcast and Making Recovery Real film as well.
Okay, thank you. Thanks for all the plugs at the end. Always get the plug in, always room for a plug.
We saw you pop in. Oh, go quick.
Because I've got a couple of questions that have come through the chat, and obviously there was a lot of information there, and I am listening intently to basically steal some ideas for our comms, and we'll be getting in touch around that, because I think there's a whole heap of learning. You know, you're making those connections and making those connections real with people who are being impacted right now, in terms of the peer recovery line and your conversations and your cafe conversations, and what's going to be really critical, because that's going to be quite I guess what you're hearing is going to be very representative of the population at large in terms of the impact of COVID especially, and that's where we need to now move. Now we're moving into the next phase of that. So it's really important that we share the learning. So that the first question is around, the evaluation of what you're doing, and then how can we share what's coming into you and what you're dealing with across the wider services and agencies and people that can perhaps help you. Question.
So what was the question? Sorry.
But evaluation of the work we're doing.
How are you going to, how can we share this wider and in terms of the themes of what people are coming to now, which are people are living that at the moment, so that it will inform obviously service and service planning going forward. So I guess it's just joining the dots around all of that.
I think as a team, because we're quite a big team, the mental health engagement involvement team, the network coordinators and Ruth, our team leader, all sit within strategic arms within Living Life Well. So we feed it up the way, anytime we do an awareness day, we do an SBAR report that we're always conscious of feeding back. Sorry, Louise, I don't know if you were going to answer it, but
no, you go.
we've Ruth and Lindsay are involved in like the mental health SPG. Louise sits on suicide prevention. So we're kind of well placed to feed that back up the way. I would say, I don't know if you want to add to that.
No, I would agree with that. We are completely accountable, obviously, for our actions. And yes, we do sit on many strategic boards where we do answer lots of questions about what's going on.
But I guess it's just that assurance that we are sharing that as widely as we can. And I know that we'll pick it up obviously through the comms and engagement subgroup. There's a question that's come in from Sheila, and it's around and you picked up on some of this around the work you were doing around generational activities, and that obviously had to be paused, what you had planned, but some of the Facebook live and the cafe conversations. I said once there's these days there is quite rightly growing awareness of the need for mental health support for men, youngsters, sports people, new mothers, but there seems to be not so much about for the needs of the elderly. So that Sheila herself would appreciate local support and discussion groups specifically for older people who are struggling with depression. So I guess that is one of your Facebook, but if you want to.
Yeah, we actually, before lockdown, one of the pieces of work we were doing was with Community Companions, our befriending kind of project around going in to do conversations at the sheltered housing complexes, because mental health isn't a word that the older generation would have been like used. So I visited one of the sheltered housing complexes, and we had a kind of start of a conversation, and we were going to look at collecting stories from older people, but we do really close work with our older person's development worker who has a network. We're involved in Say Something Dundee, but we are very much Nicola, who is our older person, is very much attached to what we're doing in terms of awareness raising and stuff. So moving forward, we're going to have conversation cafes, and we're looking to theme them. So we might have one around men's mental health. We could have older people. So if people have topic ideas that they want us to do around themes, or topics, the difficult conversations, then please get in touch, because we're a way to set up an agenda, a timetable even of cafes and conversations, and not just the awareness days, but themes and how we get information and services out there. So it's coming up to the National Day of Reflection on Tuesday. So that we're doing a conversation cafe on there. So yeah, get in touch with any themes or topics.
Great, thank you. We will make sure that the wrapping up of the event, and then when we share it as the recorded version, that all the your contact details will be shared as part of that package, so for people to get in touch. Right, thank you so much.
Thanks, Jane. Thanks very much.
Absolutely brilliant. And we'll just move on now. We're going to move.
Thank you.
Next on the agenda is Kate. Kate's the Interim Director of Mental Health Services. And she is going to be doing she's just going to be talking all the time, doing a Q&A session. So welcome, Kate, if you're there.
I am here, Jane. Thank you very much. Would you like me just to, well, let me introduce myself first. I'm Kate Belly, Interim Director of Mental Health in Tayside. And I'm so pleased to be here today to talk at this open session. And again, you know, building on the back of a lot of the work that the Communications and Engagement Group have carried out. I think, Jane, you did yourself a disservice by saying September. I think it was more like June or July. So there's been a lot of work that's taken place over that period of time to get us to this point in terms of the launch with the public today, and the Chief Exec obviously speaking in terms of his you know, thoughts around the living life well. So I'm pleased to be here today. I can take you through a few slides that will cover some of the element and maybe just reinforce what others have said. So I think we are good to go in terms of the slides. So thank you very much for that. That first slide just gives an introduction in terms of my name. Do I need to just, excuse me a second. Oh, do I have someone controlling the slides on the other side? I think if Megan is controlling the slides, if you could just maybe take me on to the second slide then, Megan, thank you. Sorry, I thought I had controlled it for a minute, but thank you for that, that's great. So the second slide for me, again, builds on what has previously been presented today, that when we started to look at the independent inquiry output and the joint statement that the Tayside Executive Partners had made, and the Tayside Executive Partners are the 4 Chief Executives of the 3 local authorities, the NHS Tayside Board, and also there was input at that level from the Chief Superintendent of Police, Andrew Todd. So very much before we set out on this journey, the organisations across Tayside had made a joint commitment to ensure that mental health and well-being was a priority across Tayside. So they came up with their joint statement. They then called it Listen, Learn, Change. And what I'm saying across this slide in itself is that I then kind of adopted that, if you like, as a bit of a formula to ensure that we did actively listen, and we heard what mattered to people, what matters to you, and what we needed to think about in terms of making improvements. We then looked at what can we learn, how can we co-create things with people, who do we need to learn from, where are these things being done well, and to be teachable, you know, in terms of understanding that we need to learn in relation to if there are things that currently we do good, then we learn from them. If there are things that we need to learn from that we don't currently do well, we need to look at ways of improving. And that's where we move on to the change component. Where are the opportunities to move from what people might see as old ways of working to new ways of working, and something that we call shifting the balance of care. And that kind of means that, you know, maybe previously what doctors will have done, we're now training nurses to do, and other allied health professionals, and indeed working with the third sector very much at community level to say what can the entire system deliver in relation to mental health and well-being. So that was the strategy and the vision built very much back in March 2020, April 2020, around how will we listen, how will we learn, how will we change. Thank you, Megan. So moving on, the independent inquiry, which if people don't know, was published in February 2020. It was the result of a 2-year piece of work that a chap called Dr. David Strang chaired an independent inquiry where there were 1,500 voices across Tayside contributed to that independent inquiry, which resulted in the report that was called Trust and Respect, which was published in February 2020. There were 51 recommendations across those 5 themes. When we started to work on this in March 2020, you'll see there's a bit of a timeline that's along the bottom of that, which was our current timeline that we worked to. We had 4 milestones that we wanted to achieve, which was to get that Listen, Learn, Change action plan co-created with as many voices as we could across those 5 themes and across those 49 of the 51 recommendations that Tayside had a responsibility to deliver. We achieved that by getting the draft in place by June 2020. We had quite a big event in May 2020 where we brought people together in a very similar setup to today, where we checked out what we had developed as part of the Listen, Learn, Change action plan. before we submitted that to the government in July. We then worked towards that draft strategy. We, at that point, talked about publishing the strategy in December, which we have managed to do. However, we've launched the strategy in February and today with yourselves. Dr. Strang is coming back in April through to June, so that timeline talks about there will be some assessment of what progress we've made over the last year. And I think as Grant, our Chief Exec, has said earlier in the meeting, there will be conversations with people who've been engaged and involved in the process over the last year with that assessment of progress. So I would absolutely encourage that and promote that with people to provide your feedback when asked and when invited. So thank you for that. Next slide, please. So very busy slide, but we worked with, through the Comms and Engagement Group, an external specialist in terms of design, which I hope that people see the benefit of that in terms of the quality of output that we've had. But this slide here takes you through, as you see in the centre, from the statement of intent that I mentioned in January from the Tayside Executive Partners, through to what we've achieved in terms of a shared aim. That what we heard from people when we listened is that people wanted to move towards much more a whole systems approach, a holistic model, rather than what people had felt was much more of a clinical model around mental illness, rather than looking at mental health overall. So again, from the very outset, we were looking at people, we were looking at the culture of mental health, but again, coming back to mental health as a public health concern, that it was very much about mental health of the population, and indeed thinking about from pre-birth to old age in terms of a whole system approach. And also just listening to Making Recovery Real staff there who have been involved throughout the process as well, that again influencing our thinking around prevention, early intervention through to recovery. So this slide here just takes you through what we had at a point in time, potentially around June and July this year, were 10 high impact changes that we wanted to achieve. And that was very much around taking things to a focus to develop world-class mental health care services in Tayside. And as has been previously said, we are on a journey. There is work to do, and we would like to continue to do that. So I won't go into any more detail in terms of that slide, but we'll happily take questions on it if people have questions. Thank you. So again, a bit of a timeline, more in relation to that co-creation process that we've gone through, that I think Brooke, Jane, others, can talk eloquently about. But from the outset, it was very much, how do we co-create a strategy for Tayside with the people of Tayside, and how do we engage the people of Tayside? So identifying the number of organisations that work across Dundee, Angus and Perth and Kinross. Obviously, in terms of the independent inquiry, there were real connections that had already been made, and we were able to pick up on a very, very large database of organisations. Obviously, in March, I think if I can say it was either the 16th or the 23rd of March that we went into the pandemic for a formal process. So therefore, we had to consider, how are we going to continue to make mental health a priority in Tayside, and continue to offer that stakeholder engagement and that two-way communication. So we have done that. I think we can look back now and think that we did that in some very innovative and creative ways. So the timeline, as you see there, talks you through that strategy co-creation. There was something like 95 different contributions to the strategy, which I had the job of knitting together into one major document. Whilst we were continuing in that two-way process with people, we have gone out to what we call further engagement on the content of Living Life Well, which I think we were kind of knowing it being called possibly at that time, because the Communication Engagement Group had gone through a fantastic process of possibly coming up with 4 or 5 different titles for the document. But in that true co-creation, it was really about what did people feel about the different titles, and what proposal would they come back to the overall board with. So fantastically agreement to do that. The co-production aspect of it, people talk about what's the difference between co-creation and co-production. So the co-creation was really about that. What did the content, the scope of the document, what was that going to look like? What was the priorities around mental health for people in Tayside? And what was the content of the document there? But the co-production is very much what you see in the design in terms of what would the document look like? What would the style of the document be? So it was really very much about defining that new model of care and how were we going to describe that in the Living Life Well strategy, which we have there as our original milestone in terms of the launch of the strategy in January. We did publish the strategy in January, and we have launched it in the 25th of February, which we're saying here is our launch now into the delivery and the implementation of the strategy. I hear people saying that this is the first step. I'd like to think that the foundation has been laid for that blueprint for Living Life Well in Tayside across the many areas that the strategy talks about. And you could, start to talk about what other people have talked about in terms of the need for that wider social inclusion around mental health, in terms of making people's life opportunities better through better employment, tackling some of the stigma and discrimination, the isolation, and also building in improvements in mental health services and supports throughout Tayside. And obviously we do have the 5-year programme, and I hope that everyone who's engaged in the call today is aware of that mental health and wellbeing change programme, and I will come on to, I think it's the next slide, to give you some detail on that. Thank you. So in the mental health and wellbeing change programme, there are 6 core large-scale projects, I have to say, that tackle that system-wide approach to mental health and wellbeing in Tayside. These are illustrations that were drawn up through when we started to scope those workshops, and again we had something like 600 people involved in the workshops between March 2020 all the way through to December 2020 and obviously beyond. So good mental health for all is critical to success in terms of how you lift up mental health in Tayside, but also looking at what services are delivered within Tayside, but also national services such as NHS 24, what role they play in providing services locally. We'll look there at the primary and community. What a successful mental health and wellbeing service will have good, strong links within community third sector, but will also have good links for mental health at the point of care where people use the NHS, whether that be through general practice, and therefore you move into what specialist services are around for children and young people. Specialist mental health services include what we will deliver in the community, but also what will be delivered in an acute hospital. So you start to get the feel for that this is population-wide in terms of age, but it's also system-wide in terms of services. Thank you. So this is quite a busy slide, but it does give you the organisational structure of what I call a comprehensive programme of work. You see across the top there, I've talked about the Tayside Executive Partners. Again, those are all the organisations who deliver services across Tayside from a public sector point of view. And they are the oversight group and will continue, I believe, to provide that commitment and investment in mental health and wellbeing going forward. You then have a Tayside Mental Health and Wellbeing Programme Board, which you need to keep the discipline and the structure in a comprehensive programme like this. But that has membership from across third sector organisations across Tayside, and indeed, across a number of different sectors in Tayside, to ensure that the voice of lived experience is heard at that programme board level, but also we can take advice and consider what are the models of care currently and what do they need to look like going forward. Very much in a programme like this, it percolates up from the bottom in terms of people looking at how care services are currently delivered now and how they will be developed going forward. And that's where the co-creation should continue in terms of a programme like this. So you'll see there that there is an operational steering group, again, very much about What do we need to develop? What will that look like? Can we test that out? Can we test it out with the 6 projects? And what does it mean across each of the projects, but actually what is the relationship between the projects interdependent with that? Down the left-hand side of that, you'll see that there's a number of themes. To change the mental health of population over time, there are certain things that I think, in terms of what we scoped with people, what people felt was important in order that we could meet those priorities, were things that you see down the side there, that it was important that anything that gets developed in future takes a human rights approach. So therefore there's a short life working group looking at of those 6 projects, and what sits beneath those projects are different work streams to ensure that they all consider a human rights approach going forward. And it's the same for the others. Have all of those groups got something built into them that talk about suicide prevention, that talk about supports in education and awareness. Transitions was a big thing that came up during the development of the programme and the co-creation. We heard a lot from adult support and protection and child protection and other types of committees that talked about people can get lost in between children's services and adult services. There really needs to be something that connects up, not just between children and young people, but between primary care services and hospital services. So there is a group looking at transitions, which I think is quite groundbreaking, because it doesn't really happen anywhere else in Scotland. So the innovative nature of that, I think, is something that we should look forward to. Communication and engagement group you've heard a lot about today. Again, central to going forward. How will that group continue to work with those 6 projects across all of the themes in relation to continuing to keep that two-way dialogue and that engagement and communication going? So I'm sure you'll hear more about that. Psychological services, workforce is obviously a very important aspect of that. It's important that we use data. It's important that we know how many people use our services now, where they use them, and how we need to plan for the future. So that's how that data gets used as an intelligence around planning for the future. Again, this year we've learned more about digital aspects or new technologies or new ways of working, and we'll all become quite good at it, I hope. However, there are certain technologies that will, from a mental health and well-being, whether it be apps, whether it be new ways of working, to Near Me is something that the coroner mentioned, that has been used a lot over this year in terms of mental health practitioners keeping in touch with people with mental health conditions. So again, that's the nature of the programme. It's there, it's structured, it's disciplined, it's been supported. There are leaders that are involved in that at all levels. And I hope that people on the call today can raise awareness about it wider than those people that are already engaged and involved. Thank you. So quite quickly, just to talk about, that's the strategy design. I think we've said enough about that. Hopefully people have been able to see the strategy. There is a Living Life Well website, which again, I think the co-creators of the content of that should be really proud, because I think it's a fantastic website that now holds the suite of documents. So the Living Life Well strategy has a summary document, and again, I've got some visuals that I can show you on that. And I think, again, the Chief Exec talked about the monthly newsletters that we've been putting out over the piece in order that we can keep people informed, because I think that is the important thing going forward, that we now keep people in the loop, we keep people informed, and that people are able to influence the work going forward, which is what we've been able to do over the last year. Thank you. So what are the benefits? It's the so what question, isn't it? So you'll see in the strategy that this is laid out in a lot more detail as to what would the benefits be for individuals, for communities, and for the workforce. And I know there was a question earlier around mentally healthy workforce. Part of the Good Mental Health for All does lay out some structures in relation to how a mentally healthy workforce will move forward. Given that the Living Life Well strategy is Tayside wide, there are some complexities that potentially we could build in going forward as to how teams of staff across sectors work together. So that's one of the things I think that will be the benefit of a Tayside wide approach, is that all of the organisations will be able to interlink in terms of some of the training Earlier on, there was a slide that talked about mental health first aid. And again, those are things that I think that we'd like to move forward with in terms of trauma-informed practice. Is something that is practiced within a mental health context for mental health practitioners. There's no reason why the third sector and other organisations couldn't get involved in that, and that we build in the benefits of that wider workforce for everybody who has an interest in working in mental health, and even down to anyone who has an interest in that. So for communities, we absolutely need to eradicate stigma and discrimination. It's not just about tackling it anymore. I think it is about eradicating it. Where people experience stigma makes it difficult for people to talk about mental health. There's been a lot of coverage, over the last year in relation to promoting the discussions around mental health. Again, people's personal, emotional, psychological experience of COVID has enabled people to open up and to ask for help. However, in terms of the stigma and discrimination attached to mental health, really is something that I hope Living Life Well enables communities to talk more about and to take that forward. Again, I think I'm speaking to an audience that know a lot about engagement with carers, working with carers, being carers, having lived experience of mental health. And indeed, the perfect example that was mentioned earlier around peer support, the strategy talks about how can we increase the use of peer support across a range of mental health services, again, to ensure that people with lived experience have access to other people with lived experience, and indeed people who can help navigate what sometimes can be quite a complex set of circumstances. So that is something that, in terms of building in better, more accessible mental health services in the community, that will be available. One of the things that the Scottish Government has put in place since 2018 is to increase the number of mental health practitioners that are available in the community by 800 workers. And that means across Tayside, something like 60 new staff in relation to mental health and wellbeing based in the community. In terms of individuals, I think it's very important to say what we've heard, and this is why it's been written into the strategy, is that people want to see the right person first time. So it's important that people are equal partners in the design of services so that they can say, how will that work best for you, so that we can attempt to put those things in place, getting that high quality, what we call person-centred care. But what most people want is, can I just get access to the right individual at the right time so that I can get the help that I need? One of the key things that Living Life Well and other strategies develop more is in terms of the early intervention, the prevention, the support and integrated services. Thank you. If we just maybe go through the last two slides, I think it is. Yeah, so these are just pictures of, this is the Living Life Well strategy, a lifelong approach to mental health in Tayside. The next slide gives you an indication. That's the full strategy. We have a strategy summary, an easy read, and a comms and engagement report, all of which are available on the Living Life Well website. So I think that brings me to the end of a set of slides I hope that just give you an overview of the overall strategy. Happy to take questions. Thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you very much, Kate, for that very detailed presentation. I'm sure everyone will have learned quite a lot from that, and it's useful for people to see the operational element of what's going on, as well as the strategic stuff. So we actually have quite a lot of questions for you. Whilst I am conscious of time, I'm sure we can fit a couple in before we move on, because people were quite keen to hear what you had to say. The first question actually is, individuals seeking mental health support via their GP usually see a clinician as the next step, with peer support sometimes offered later on. Wouldn't it be better to offer peer support in the first instance, thus potentially avoiding the need for a clinical intervention?
The quick answer to that is yes. And I think we heard sufficient evidence today that peer support is available in the community. So I suggest that potentially maybe making that more visible. The Living Life Well website is there. The GP, potentially we could talk to the general practitioners across Tayside to alert them to that, in relation to promoting and preventing people, seeing a GP. I absolutely agree with the question that peer support at the earliest point may be beneficial for those individuals.
Perfect, thank you so much. I see that Grant quickly put up his hand. Or you want to jump in on that, Grant? Maybe? Okay, in that case, the next question is, what is happening, oh, sorry, 2 seconds. What is happening to ensure that people with substance use issues and mental health concerns, or both, have equal access to person-centered recovery-focused support?
Okay, thank you for the question. I think that at the minute, people with substance misuse issues have access to a service. People with mental health conditions who require support have access to a service, and these services currently might be separate. So I think one of the things that the Listen, Learn, Change Action Plan talks about is, could we look at merging a service that would give that person who has both substance misuse behaviours and mental health condition access to one service? So to integrate that into one area. So we will be testing that in Tayside. It's one of the things that, in terms of merging a service for people with substance misuse and mental health services. So it's not to say that a service doesn't exist now. What we'll be looking to do is to provide something that's more tailored and more person-centred, and therefore someone who has what we call a dual diagnosis would be able to go to one service rather than two. Does that answer your question?
Yes, it does. Thank you very much. I'm going to try and squeeze another couple more in here. So what action is being taken to foster within the wider community a sense of ownership and empowerment around mental health and living well, so that people facing challenges feel connected to and supported by society and their wider community?
So I think Grant answered this question, earlier when we talk about the Tayside-wide nature of the mental health and wellbeing strategy. Living life well takes the whole community. It will take other organisations. Solely improving mental health services will not overcome, people's connection to society. Having a good job, having good relationships with people, not feeling isolated in the community are all really, really important things. And I think that the strategy is one step to look at housing, it's to look at poverty, it looks at deprivation, it looks at inequalities. So in terms of every organisation working together to lift up mental health, I think is a phrase that you guys have developed through the communications and engagement group, is very much about keeping people connected. So I think that the network that has been created over the last year will do that in service of people with mental health conditions and ensure that all organisations are held accountable to do better and to do more.
Perfect. In that case, thank you very much. Just to remind anyone who may be watching, whilst we do have a lot more questions to get through and we won't be able today, unfortunately, there will be, we'll get them answered and we'll post them somewhere. So you'll
be happy to do that.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. If the people from Feeling Strong and CAMHS could get ready, that would be great.
Hello, right, if you can all just bear with me for 2 seconds, I'm just going to get my presentation up. Hopefully this goes swimmingly well. Brooke, can you see that? Can everyone else see that okay?
Yes.
Fantastic. Well, hi everyone. Look, thank you ever so much for having me along. So my name is Robbie Matthews and I work for Feeling Strong. I am the Community and Outreach Coordinator. I've been invited today just to have a sort of brief overview on the work that we do in the community and how we can go forward looking at the strategy. So before I go into that, there we go. So just a very brief overview of Feeling Strong. So we're a youth-led, Dundee-based charity, and we're really looking to improve the lives of young people who live with mental health and wellbeing challenges. So we're really looking to foster the skills, confidence, and aspirations that they need to flourish. As you can see, we focus on 3 separate parts. So we're person-centered, recovery-focused, we've got a growth mindset. So in reality, what does that mean? So we're person-centered in the sense that we're really looking at the needs of the individual rather than the needs of the service, our partners, or other stakeholders. very much trying to get the person first and always trying to put any reasonable adjustments in place that they may need. We're also recovery focused, so that's very much not just looking at the symptoms, but we're really looking at resilience, the strengths and control over the life's challenges that young people face, and really just looking to move forward, set new goals, and hopefully create and get young people to start taking part in meaningful relationships and activities. And finally, growth mindset, as I'm sure a lot of you are already aware, that's very much looking at the fact that if you put in effort, if you actually put in good strategies and hard work, and you get help from other people, and by that I mean appropriate support and help, we can very much look at getting a young person to grow in the skills and the abilities that they have. And obviously that is very much different from a fixed mindset, and that's very much looking at the fact that skills, talents, etc. are innate. You know, you cannot develop them. But at Feeling Strong, we very much believe that no matter what, you can very much develop in that. And as it says at the bottom there, everything that we do at Feeling Strong is designed by young people, it's delivered by young people, and it's for the benefit of young people. So just moving on quickly now to look at our work. So we have several streams. The first of which is the community and outreach stream. So this is very much looking at playing a direct role in making positive changes in mental health, and we're looking to build a community of support surrounding mental health and well-being within Dundee. Now, naturally, by doing that, we're trying to help young people in their mental health, but it does go wider to that. So we're very much looking to increase the provision of awareness workshops that's delivered in the community, in workplaces, schools, and any other partner organisations that are interested. And really, we're looking to empower those individuals and then help them signpost anyone who are experiencing mental health and wellbeing challenges. So as a very brief example of the sort of work we do through this stream is we have delivered ASSIST in the past, so it's applied suicide intervention skills training. And really, again, that's looking at creating that supportive community environment and ensuring that young people are supported, whether they're in a crisis, whether they're just in particular need of support, or indeed if they just need to be signposted to somewhere to look to see what might help them and might not. Another example is our own program called Feeling Strong Champions. So that's actually looking to upskill young people in schools. It's raising awareness in mental health. It's challenging the sort of perceptions and the stigma surrounding it, but it's also allowing those champions to identify signs of maybe their peers starting to struggle and then signposting them onwards to relevant services. So that's the community and outreach stream. The next one is learning and skills. So through this, what we're really trying to do is help young people into employment, out of underemployment, and support them into higher or further education. It's very much looking at supporting soft skills and confidence development, and hopefully through that creating opportunities for young people so they can get onto their mental health and wellbeing recovery journey. So we do this by utilising soft skills development activity-based programs, and we combine this with near peer support. And I just heard at the end there, we just speaking about that sort of peer support role and how that can actually make quite a substantial impact on people who are suffering from mental health and wellbeing challenges. And indeed, we believe that's the case for young people and their recovery journey. An example of this is a project which is currently being put on hold because of COVID, but it's Live and Learn, and that's giving young people the opportunity to participate in either a sport or art stream, and they can learn new skills whilst also being allowed the ability to be creative in a very supportive environment. And we really hope that, again, we can use that near peer supporter role. So getting young people who are of a similar age, but maybe in a profession that the young people have an interest in, and helping give them that insight into how they can take that forward and what they can do. And the next one I want to talk about is hopefully researching content. Yep. So very much this is looking at being innovative in the design, the delivery, and the creation of mental health resources and the support methods that we can put in place for the improvement in mental health and wellbeing for young people. So we ensure that the projects themselves are actually based on best evidence. And just like I said at the beginning, we actively get young people involved at all areas and all points of the development of our projects, and indeed in the research and content stream as well, it's particularly important. Because ultimately the young people themselves can actually provide that consistent and meaningful voice on how we can take our services forwards and how our services can best fit them. We have also developed a range of resources for young people. So as you can see in that middle box there, that's an example of what's called the Young Person's Guide to Feeling Strong. So that's very much a mental health and wellbeing resource. It's age specific, so that one in itself is aimed at 12 to 18-year-olds. Alongside that, we've also got a guide called the Kids Guide to Feeling Strong, and that's based around the age of 8 to 12. And as I say, it's really just discussing mental health. It's also allowing young people that targeted support in their language that they can understand. How do you talk about mental health and how do you take that forward? And again, so the next stream I want to talk about is recovery and support. So the aim of that is to offer support and also give a diverse and varied safety net for young people, and again, providing support to them. So we utilize engaging therapeutic group-based activities for the support of young people and assisting in their recovery. They're actually designed by the young people themselves, and really what we're trying to do about that is build around that community of interest, around their hobbies, their lived experience, to get other young people involved who are also interested in it. Again, this does utilize that near peer supporter role as well, and giving that targeted support for young people. And ultimately, an example of that, as you can see there, we ran a games club, book club, board game club, sorry. But ultimately, obviously, COVID at the moment has sort of hampered that, but we're really looking to start that again. But another more recent example is a project called Making Waves, where young people went to spaces around Scotland. They made artworks in response to those spaces, and sorry, excuse me. And again, that's really just allowing them to utilize the sort of creativity that they have and combining that with their recovery journey. And again, really demonstrating to the young people actually the benefit of getting out to these scenic places and the fact that they are quite literally on our doorstep and quite easily accessible. The next one is campaigns and advocacy. So here we're looking to improve engagement and awareness of mental health, and also to amplify the voices of young people, their challenges, their lived experience of mental health and well-being. And an example of this is the hashtag No Filter Needed campaign we ran, and that was really looking into the negative impact that social media can have on young people's mental health. Very much looking at that sort of perfect appearance and the filters and the way that people can actually change their appearance, and that everything as you see it may not be as it seems. And at the moment as well, we're also looking to get the voices of young people to collect their opinions and hopefully influence the policies at the upcoming Holyrood election. So I just want to go over a very brief case study on the sort of work that we've done and hopefully how that's impacted the young people. So we did run a project called Wellbeing Matters, and this is a filmmaking activity project. Young people were given the opportunity to create documentaries around mental health, but very much focusing on the support and the activities that exist locally and how they can be used for our own mental health. We have been planning to sort of hold a live screening at a local cinema of these videos and these documentaries, but again, COVID has made us have to put that on hold for now. But hopefully once things start to come back to normality later on this year, we'll actually be able to do that. But going back to the project itself, it very much was looking at increasing the confidence of young people, improving their mental health and their ability to creatively express themselves, looking at improve their aspirations and their ability to actually secure a positive destination. So during this, we actually did see quite a dramatic impact and very much saw measurable parts against the outcomes we were looking to achieve. So the young person we interviewed for the case study discussed how their mental health improved, their confidence and their understanding of their mental health also improved, and their ability actually just to express themselves improved. I think one of the biggest impacts actually was that the young person went to another local organisation who were themselves looking to make a documentary, and they actually took a lead role in the production of that and also in the storyboarding. So really taking those skills, utilising the skills they've learned and actually applying that to what they were doing in this other group. And as well, the young person wanted to actually get actively involved in Feeling Strong's project of Wellbeing Matters and help out with that and become a volunteer. And I think for us, this really just sort of demonstrated that the benefit of activity-based projects. The young person had the opportunity to be supported by near peers, to participate in this project with other young people who are also like-minded, and really just take that forward. And as well, help them through their mental health and wellbeing recovery journey. I would just like to take this moment to have a brief look again at the sort of how our services compare to sort of statutory community work. So obviously we're non-statutory. So as an organisation, we have a full awareness of our boundaries and our competencies of our service. So we're focusing on supporting young people between the ages of 8 to 26, offering that throughout the young person's journey of their mental health and wellbeing recovery. So either before they attend a statutory service, during it, or indeed once it comes to an end. We can offer support to young people who are on a waiting list for statutory services, or again, who may not have been determined to be, who may not have been determined to have been best selected for that statutory support. And we also like to look at, as I've said to you throughout, that mental health and wellbeing is a recovery journey. And realistically, we like to see ourselves fitting along that whole journey line with our young people that we support. So we're really providing that holistic support for young people. And that means that they can access multiple projects and services that will best suit their needs alongside any statutory support that they're receiving. Referrals can also be made from any referrals can be made by the young person themselves, or indeed they can come along and just sort of have a chat with us. We have a drop-in service, but we also like to look at the fact that they don't need to have a diagnosed mental health or wellbeing challenge, so it can be very much self-reported. And going forward, we like to see that our services would be offered to young people who maybe don't meet the CAMHS criteria, and helping complement the services and bolster the support to the young people. Now, I'd just like to very quickly go on to how could we actually move on to support the strategy itself, So strategically, we will provide monitoring and development of the strategy. We played an active role in its development and supported its aims and direction before the official launch today. And through our involvement, we have a clear understanding of our part and how we can actually advance and support the strategy to best serve the local community. And we like to see ourselves really as a supportive but challenging friend. Operationally, really, it was just very much to do with the fact that we can continue offering the services that I've mentioned before, and really just take that forward. For example, monitoring the impact it's having, campaigning and advocating young people's voices, taking those further, making sure they're being heard, and really building that community holistic support for young people. And I believe that is me. So look, thank you ever so much for listening to me today. If you want to find anything else out about Feeling Strong, our website is there, and that is our social media handle as well. Thanks so much.
Thank you very much for that, Robbie. We've now got a presentation from CAMHS, which has been pre-recorded. For anyone who doesn't know, CAMHS is Child and Adolescent Mental Health Services. So I will share that just now, if you give me 2 wee seconds. Right, okay.
Hi everyone, my name is Ken Haddon and I am the Mental Health Education Officer for NHS Tayside Child and Adolescent Mental Health Service, or as I guess we're more commonly known, the CAMHS. We're really grateful to have the kind of opportunity to be part of this event today and to have a platform to talk about the Child and Adolescent Mental Health Service in Tayside. And when thinking about what was best to use this 15 minutes for today, I suppose it's really important to kind of think about that major area about young people finding support. And I think it's clear that there's been an increased impact on children and young people's emotional health and well-being and mental health over the past year in response to the kind of COVID-19 pandemic. And this increase, this has seen an increased presentations to GP surgeries for help and support from young people, children and their families, and also then subsequently in the referrals into the CAMHS service. And there's real emerging themes that are coming out of this pandemic around kind of behavioural concerns in kind of under 12s, around an increase in adolescent anxiety, and around a very definite increase in disordered eating for young people across Tayside, but also the whole of Scotland. And it's really clear that these responses to these difficulties needs to come really quickly. And we know that the quicker that young people can access support, the better outcomes we can achieve for young people. But I think, to quote the Living Life Well strategy, that support has to be the kind of right help at the right time, and it has to be the right support. And for many young people, that will very much definitely be from a specialist child and adolescent mental health service. And I hope that the video at the start of this presentation gave much more of an overview about that kind of real specialist role that CAMHS has to play. But for other children and young people, while their distress or their the difficulties that they have with how they're thinking and feeling and behaving is very, very real, that CAMHS often is not the immediately right service for those children and young people. And it's sometimes that support, that right help at the right time, can come from a kind of different support and part of that kind of wider child and adolescent support services that exist in Tayside. And so I really felt that because children and young people and their families can often say finding that right support can be the really difficult thing to do, I think I wanted to spend the 15 minutes just exploring that, and we've kind of created this infographic that hopefully really helps that. So in considering that kind of wider network of child and adolescent mental health services and support, it's really great to be able to share the platform with colleagues from the Coroner and Feeling Strong, because it really does present together this kind of wider network of support that young people can access. And what I really want to say on that is that that we need to be clear that all of young people's distress is not a kind of mental health disorder, that lots of young people are reacting to the kind of very difficult situations that are occurring at the moment that they haven't experienced before. And actually the right support for that can be found in this kind of wider network. And I'm going to talk a little bit about that a bit more as we go on. So really that bit about finding support is kind of really important, and there's some kind of key messages for CAMHS from the kind of CAMHS clinical national standards, and also from the kind of Strang report, that really that we need to do better as a service at kind of being clear about kind of what our role is amongst the kind of wider services, and also about kind of supporting families to find the right support when we aren't the right support for them. So I kind of think that's really important. And what we need to know is that support comes in a kind of tiered approach on a continuum, and young people's difficulties are on a continuum, moving from kind of what's often described as kind of situational distress, where young people are kind of reacting to difficult things in their lives, and their distress is real and it's there, and their difficulties are there, but where that support can be kind of put in place quickly and have young people becoming increasingly kind of well really, really quickly. And for other young people, it's kind of a prolonged difficulty and a kind of clinical illness right at the other end of that continuum, where they kind of will need a much longer, much more specialist support that kind of comes from CAMHS. So it's really important to be aware of that continuum, because what we kind of don't want to do, and what we're really reluctant to do, is place all young people's difficulties into a narrative of kind of clinical illness or a kind of medical narrative, because what that does for some young people who could find support really, really early is put them on a journey through kind of specialist services that for a lot of young people isn't necessary. They can find that support for the distress that they're feeling from other services much more quickly and have really kind of positive outcomes. And so because of that, we need to be clearer about what we do, but we also need to work alongside all the other services that support young people to kind of make that a kind of much more seamless access to support and moving through supports for children and young people. And with that, we're kind of working with young people, we're working with families at the moment as a service, we're working with schools, we're working with community groups, we're working in partnership with the other kind of wider network of child and adolescent mental health services to ensure that there's a kind of much more of a clarity about what each of the services do, so that young people can kind of find that support quickly and that the journey of care is kind of made much more easy for them. But then if we move on to thinking about, when children and young people are referred to CAMHS and where the service is not felt appropriate for them, we need to kind of, as a service, do better at thinking about that bit about where young people go. And we use this terminology, and it's not CAMHS terminology, this terminology of rejected referrals. And it's a kind of government terminology that's not really helpful. I think when young people and families feel that they're rejected from the service, there's the sense of kind of not validating the distress that they have, that they're not ill enough to be seen by CAMHS, that they're not, there's all these kind of negative connotations when we use the word rejected. And I hope today to kind of offer clarity to that actually it's not a rejection from the service, it's about thinking about where the right support comes from at that time, and dependent on where that child is on that continuum. It's really about thinking that, as we say, not putting children and young people onto a kind of journey that's not going to be helpful for them into specialist services, but actually thinking about what could be tried in different areas of their life first, what kind of support could they receive first. Because of how they're presenting, we know that better outcomes can be achieved for them in other areas. And so because of that, I think we as a service need to get better at that bit about how we work with other services and how we signpost young people into the supports that would be more helpful for them at that earlier stage. And then I guess, as I said before, that transition through to kind of more specialist services if in future that was felt needed. But I think ultimately that kind of notion of rejected is not a good one, and we need to kind of do a bit of work on kind of getting rid of that and not using that, but thinking about now is not the right time for our service, but let's help you find the service that you need and signpost you in that kind of meaningful signposting into services. And I suppose one of the big things that we've been working on as a service is our new webpage. The webpage was developed, we had a survey that 500 young people across Tayside took part in, really asking what they needed from CAMHS as a service by way of information and access to resources and support. So as I say, 500 young people contributed to that, and the website was built. As we were building it, the website content went out to kind of 6 key organisations, parents organisations, children and young people's organisations, again for their comment on the information that we were putting out. Was it the right information? Was it helpful? Were we missing things? And then young people had the opportunity to kind of ask us questions, which we responded to. And I suppose now what's happened, the initial page is built, and it will be launched at the beginning of next month, and then it will go back out to young people again via Cool to Talk, who very kindly hosted our survey for us, to ask young people again how they feel. And this will kind of be part of a running kind of improvement from CAMHS to kind of keep adding to and changing our webpage, and ultimately to have young people come in and their families and help us to kind of co-write and co-design the webpage for other young people and families. So on this webpage, we have added much more information for young people around the different services that CAMHS offers. We're much clearer about our referral criteria. There's lots of information around self-help. There's lots of resources, both locally and nationally, and online for young people. And I guess just offering that support and being able to kind of to feed young people into that support so they can get that the kind of support that they need. The other thing that we're kind of doing, CAMHS have invested in my job for one, which is mental health education officer, and really acknowledging that we need to be much better connected with the services that support young people in the community and work together to kind of co-create and co-deliver information and support in groups for young people, and just kind of just work much closer together in that whole network of child and adolescent mental services. And in coronavirus and in lockdown, I've been working really hard to kind of build up those links with young people through these organisations, and to kind of start putting together a plan of work that we're going to kind of co-deliver together. And so I'm kind of thinking about CAMHS and the ongoing improvement from CAMHS, and there is a whole kind of series of improvement going on in the CAMHS service in response to the kind of listen, learn, change about what families and young people have told us that they kind of need from a service, so that when young people do access that kind of specialist part of the child and adolescent mental health services, that the service that they get is a kind of really good service. So there's been investment from CAMHS in a full-time improvement lead officer to drive improvement and kind of improve quality within the service. And Tabitha Hilliard has been working with us for kind of coming up for a year to kind of really drive forward that improvement and change process. And I suppose the question that's always asked about CAMHS is the kind of waiting times in CAMHS. And I guess we're pleased to see that CAMHS are currently meeting the mental health pathway government targets, that young people are being seen within that 18-week target. The neurodevelopmental pathway has a much more considerable waiting time, and there are huge improvements going on at the moment with that. A whole kind of improvement programme is going on to really try and dramatically reduce the number of young people waiting to be seen, and to make sure that they're seen much more quickly. There's other really significant improvement work going on. We have tested change in kind of GP surgeries with clinical staff in GP surgeries as a kind of liaison between ourselves and the CAMHS service. We're Near Me champions now, so in response to COVID, we are the highest using service of the Near Me facility, and that young people, I guess just demonstrating how quickly we can adapt to the need for normal services to resume as best they can, so that young people can get the support they need despite not being able to do as many face-to-face contacts. It also means that children and young people in rural environments are much more able to access the service. And there are other, significant improvements going on in the CAMHS service. We're at the moment piloting the kind of development of a pathway support for families while they wait to be seen by the neurodevelopmental team. So there's a whole kind of catalogue of things that are going on in the service. And I just want to leave you with a quote from the Clinical Care Group Manager for CAMHS, Diane Caldwell. It just kind of says, "Our shared vision is to promote a whole family approach, and by working together we'll deliver high quality care in a multi-agency and integrated approach." And I hope that in my presentation today that's really come over, that CAMHS is part of a whole network of supports for young people. It's not by any means the only support that young people can access when they are struggling with their emotional health and well-being and their mental health, and that we are working as a service to kind of to be much more invested in that whole network and much more part of that whole network, so that young people feel that they can access the right support, and if we're not the right support for them, that they're helped to access the support that they need very quickly. I just want to say thanks for listening. And myself and Diane are now on the call and are happy to take your questions.
Thank you very much to Karen, I guess retroactively, because she did it in the past. I know we're running a little bit behind, but maybe we might have time for one or two questions for CAMHS. I'm not seeing any questions for CAMHS. I think they've been answered in the Q&A chat box. So that's perfect. In that case, we're going to move on to Perth Health and Social Care Partnership, and they're going to be telling us a little bit about their work. So you guys are up. Take it away.
Is that up now? Good.
Yeah, you're good to go.
Well, good afternoon, everybody, and thank you so much. Thank you so much for being inviting us along to this exciting day. It's a pleasure to be here. It's a great pleasure to be here on such a sunny day as well. And I just want to go back to start of the day when Grant Archibald mentioned, I think it's 3,000 square miles of Tayside that we are covering today, and 80 odd people online. So that's fantastic that we're able to do that. And I think that the benefits and the opportunities of doing things this way is great for people who have got a caring role, that they're able to maybe participate in this, where in other times they've maybe not been able to do it. So this is a great opportunity. I think something else I just want to say as well is, if we hear a wee bit of background noise from my home studio, as we say, it is that young people who are leaving school and walking down the path, which is something sometimes we've taken for granted, as the noise of young people, but we've not heard them for a long time. So it's nice to hear the voices of young people again walking home from school. So it's a pleasure to be here. Joining me also here today is Lindsay Bailey, who is a locality manager and service manager for psychiatry of old age inpatients, as well as she has the lead for the portfolio lead for older people's mental health within Perth and Kinross Health and Social Care Partnership. And joining Lindsay and myself is Emma Oren. She's a learning and development officer, also working within the partnership, but works closely with our colleagues within Perth and Kinross Council and our third sector colleagues. Before we go on and watch the first video, I'm just going to hand you over to Lindsay just to give a little bit more of an introduction. Lindsay.
Thank you, Colin. Hi, everybody. I'm just wanting to say it's really nice to hear and to have seen the presentations today and the stories from across Tayside. And I really just want a very brief introduction. I just want to say I hope you enjoy the video that's been produced by our friends and colleagues from the NUC, the Lighthouse Project and the Andy Mann's Club. And I believe, Colin, you maybe have some questions afterward from myself and Emma. So I'm going to just hand over and let's see this video, and then we can have a chat after. Thanks.
Lovely, thank you. Just put the video on. There we go.
Hi, my name is Sharon Thomas, and I'm the manager at the Lighthouse for Perth, a charity that deals with crisis with suicide and self-harm. And never ever has it been so important for us to give guidance to people how to live life well. This year has been the start of our services as an out of our crisis support service, and it has also been the year where COVID has hit and decimated our community. Recently we've had a tragic death in the area. My own son was affected by it because it was a friend in his school, and the kids are just crying out for somebody to give them a hug, to sit them down, explain to them how we get through this, how can they go on living life well. So that's what we're here to do. We're here to support them. Our service has changed dramatically since we started at the beginning of the year, and that has been driven a lot by the current circumstances we're in. But we've listened to what people want. We've listened to everybody that's out there, organisations, statutory, third sector, and more importantly, the clients, what it is that's missing, what they need, and then we've changed our service as we've gone along. So we will continue to be there for everybody aged 12 and upwards to provide the crisis support that they need, in the hope that we can help them to live life better.
Hi there, I'm Wendy Given and I'm an operational manager for Anchor House Support Services in Perth. We've learned that to support people to live their life well in Perth and Kinross, there needs to be a whole range of options available to people that works in and out of hours. And really primarily we want to target our services to the out hours, because that's where we feel that a lot of the existing opportunities need to be targeted towards to help people to live well. So we don't just live Monday to Friday 9 till 5, we live outside that. So we've had to really change our way of thinking about how services are delivered, and one of the big things that's come out of the independent inquiry is that people are looking for peer support services. And so for us, that's the massive change as an organisation that we're looking to take forward. And here at the Nook, there will be a huge emphasis on peer support and people with lived experience actually contributing to the running and the operations within the service. We're social beings as humans, and we need to be around other people, and while a telephone conversation or a Zoom can go a long way, I think actually being face to face with people is what a lot of people really need. So we've still been in a position to offer that, obviously safely, social distance, for the residents of Perth and Kinross, and I think they're greatly seeing the benefits from it.
Hi, I'm Alex McClintock, Project Development Champion for Andy's Man Club. Been involved with the charity now for 4 years. Started Andy's Man Club in Scotland in September 2017, and we've kind of grown from there with 6 groups all across Scotland and more in the pipeline to come. What we've learned in the time we've been involved in Andy's Man Club, that there is guys out there that are willing to get together and talk about what they're going through. If you give them the right platform, they'll actually come and start sharing and talking. Takes a bigger man to break down and cry in front of his peers when he's going through some hard times. Especially through COVID, we've learned that the community has really come together and started supporting each other. Lots of community groups jumped onto Facebook and started supporting people by getting shopping and picking up their medication and stuff like that. So our guys have been really good and they've helped each other through it. They really helped the guys that were isolating or shielding, and just once a week they went round and met guys for a coffee. I've learned to be more appreciative of what I've got. COVID's obviously given everyone a real scare, and it's changed the way we look at things and look at life. I think it just teaches you to learn as we go and just appreciate what we've got and the simple things we've got. And I think not having that social interaction and not having time with your family and missing Christmas and stuff like that, it really does make you think about what you're going to do when it's all over. But mental health was always at a crisis point before the pandemic, so I think it's going to be tenfold when we come out of it. I know we've had a lot of suicides recently in Perth and Kinross. One of the guys from Andy's Man Club used to attend has just lost his brother to suicide, so it's something that's happening all the time in Perth and Kinross, and it's something we really need to step up and get out there and get people talking and be kind to people, because you never know the invisible battle that someone's fighting.
Thank you for that. I think some great words there from the people who put that video together, and some things that I really just want to carry on from that. Coming to Lindsay, if that's all right. First, Lindsay, we heard a lot there just through the videos, just about moving forward and what we need to do, and people appreciating life. But what does it? I suppose, what does a lifelong approach to mental health in Tayside mean to the work of the Health and Social Care Partnership within Perth and Kinross?
So, Colin, I think just to say that the Perth and Kinross Partnership, for us, it means putting people in Perth and Kinross at the centre of the decisions about their support, care, treatment and recovery, and no matter their age or their mental health condition. And I think that's really important. I think in Perth and Kinross, we aim to build on and continue to foster trusting, respectful relationships, so that together everyone in Perth and Kinross can receive the right support and care, and that it meets the expectations of what they receive. And I think the Living Life Well approach and the work that will be undertaken in Perth and Kinross will demonstrate that culture of listening, learning and changing. Perth and Kinross IJB and the Health and Social Care Partnership have been actively engaged and involved and supportive of the Tayside Mental Health and Wellbeing Strategy, and have committed to working with our partners in Perth and Kinross. By that I mean people with lived experience, their carers, the communities, including our third sector and voluntary organisations, to co-produce, a local Perth and Kinross mental health and wellbeing strategy, which Living Life Well will be at its foundation. But we need to strengthen the partnerships, and the partnership is very committed to mental health support and the human rights based approach, and I think that's really, really important. support.
Can I just ask, Lindsay, just leading on from that, and you mentioned there about the Perth and Kinross mental health and wellbeing strategy. I mean, what is the sort of hope and the desired effect, the ambition for that strategy moving forward?
Okay, so one of the Perth and Kinross strategy, the biggest thing for us will be it will be inclusive of all ages, of all people in Perth and Kinross. It has that lifelong approach. And as I've said, it'll be co-produced, you know, really actively co-produced with those with lived experience, carers, families, professionals and organisations in Perth and Kinross, and everybody who are part of our communities. I think we aim to have, you know, the aim of the plan is to have clear priorities aligned to Perth and Kinross strategic plan, and actually live key actions to make sure and ensure that people can access the right service at the right time and get the most appropriate information to enable them to access the service, and also for some of their own early intervention. And I think, you know, as a partnership, and as most health and social care partnerships, one of the most important things we do is look at that early intervention and prevention agenda. And what we need is something that's accessible, joined up and coordinated, but most importantly, it needs to be needs-led, person-centred, and using that human rights approach, as I've said. But we aim to focus, one of the big aims is to focus on that reduction of mental health related stigma and finding areas to be creative and creating opportunities. I think COVID has maybe given us a good platform for this.
Yeah, I think, you know, everything you're saying there, and just that sort of moving forward and working together, and I think we've heard that throughout the course of the whole day today about just how much and how important that is to be working together. So just on that note, if it's okay, I'm just going to go to Emma, because I think it'd be good, before coming back to yourself, we go to Emma, and just maybe a wee discussion about the videos there and just our partners in the third sector and putting that together. So Emma, just yourself, you were involved in putting the videos together there, Emma, with the Nuke and the Lighthouse and Andy's Man's Club. How did that come about? How was the partnership formed there?
Well, I suppose Andy's Man Club had come to speak at Perth and Kinross Council about their work, so I kind of knew Alex from back then. But really, I suppose the working together started at the Recovery Week in Perth and Kinross, and when lockdown had started, we were thinking of a way to get people together to share what was happening to them in a kind of safe way. So we came up with the idea of creating a pair of selfie wings, which I had seen work well in other cities. And we got some young carers from CAMHS who submitted a couple of designs, and so we picked one and put it on the doors of the rugby club in the North Inch, because it's a safe space. If you look at the work of Cormac Russell and Hilary Cotton, having a learning development background, you know, we read a lot of stuff, something called a bumping space where people naturally meet and exchange, how are you, what's happening with you. So we wanted to create that, and the wings became the symbol, I suppose, of the Recovery Week. And from that we kind of you know, formed the relationship and the conversations with Andy's Man Club and the Nuke, especially Sharon.
The wings have been extremely successful. So we saw everybody sort of next to the wings there. And I know they've been called the Angels Wings, they've been called the Selfie Wings, they've been called the Recovery Wings. All very good symbols and all very good messages as well. But you've done some other work as well, and as the audience will be seeing, there's images flashing by to absent friends and other things as well, and I see a lot of gloves stuck to a tree as well, so maybe you could tell us a wee bit more about some of that.
Again, I suppose, you know, if we're looking at listen, learn, change, it's about what are we seeing and what are we continuing to see. So it's actually been mentioned by an earlier talk, Making Recovery Real. We're talking about the True Acanta project. So we have the True Acanta Perthshire project, and in November we had To Absent Friends, which is about sort of looking at loss and grief and thinking about that and thinking about each other and thinking about people that are no longer here. And we had to think of ways again of doing that safely. So we created QR codes and dotted them about, again, the North Inch. That seems to be the place that, you know, people walk through. And there were poems, there was images, there was little films, just to sort of create this pathway through to absent friends. We've also looked at, with Lindsay, we're doing a bit of work, it's called Compassionate Grief, working with Giraffe, who's a social enterprise organisation in Perth. And we had this idea of having back to home boxes or bags for people that are coming out of hospital. So they would really just have things in them to make people feel that sense of belonging in a community, whether it's information or food or somebody that they can connect with as well. And the gloves, I'm looking at that sort of floating across my screen there. That was there was a festival called Firestarter that some people might be aware of, and they did a block walk week. So this was just wandering around I think it was Tulloch in Perth. Myself and another colleague just went for a wander just to see what we could see. And I think it's something that we would like to carry on doing, because you get a real sense of what's happening in communities and what people are doing in that kind of very grassroots and sort of informal way.
So so is it hug a tree or something like that? Is that what the gloves are? I'm sorry, I'm just clarifying that.
Do you know, I never found out, but I think I think that's the kind of ethos behind it, of hugging a tree, or just that kind of having that symbolism of getting hands together.
Lovely.
I've still to find out who knitted it. I'd love to find out.
And just moving forward as well with yourself, Emma, and with people that you work with, and making those connections and looking at things to do as we go forward, and especially around that whole mental well-being, mental health, and that recovery that everybody has spoken about today, and trying to get communities involved, but especially during this time of COVID, where it's not been as easy to gather together even today in one room, although virtually we all are. What else is happening? What else have you got planned moving forward?
So we've also got this again we were planning this before COVID hit, was happy to chat benches, and these have popped up all over Britain, whereby it's just a space for people to connect with each other, whether it be in at a park or outside maybe one outside the Nuke. We've discussed that as well. And again, it's just that kind of informal connecting people, having a conversation. How are you? What's going on with you? And again, using maybe some technology of QR codes to signpost people to services that might help them. So that's another sort of plan that we've got, and we've got the money to do it. So it's just a case of getting the benches made and painted up and dotted about the place.
Lovely, fantastic. We'll maybe see that at some other point. That's great. I'm just going to go back to Lindsay, if that's okay, because we mentioned COVID there, and COVID, to be fair, Lindsay, through the whole of this presentation from everybody, hasn't been mentioned that much. I was playing a wee bit of COVID bingo during the whole time to see how many times it's mentioned, and it hasn't been, which is fairly positive, I think, because we have adapted and changed so well to that. But over the last year and during COVID, we've all had to change, as I said, and adapt a little bit. But what has this meant to the work of the partnership, and importantly, the support it has offered to the communities within the Living Well agenda as we go forward?
Yeah, I suppose the global pandemic that is COVID has focused all of our people and all of our communities around that well-being agenda, and it's not just the partnership teams that have been visiting recognised and have really, I suppose, come to the fore to support people in their well-being. I think recognising, as you've seen in films, in the film today, the great support and new opportunities that have evolved and continue to evolve across our communities in Perth and Kinross. I'm pleased to see that, and the Health and Social Care Partnership has been able to support some of this, and it's been able to co-produce with organisations and individuals across Perth and Kinross, and COVID has changed ways of working. I think for the Health and Social Care Partnership, it's enabled us to bring forward some new roles to support that sort of early intervention agenda, Colin, such as an increase in our primary care mental health nurses. We heard about that. We heard about people visiting their GP and getting support. So we've increased that resource knowing, as Andy has said in the video, you know, what's going to come at the end of COVID. So we've looked at how we support, increase that resource so that people can access more timely. We've also looked at, you know, at the suicide prevention coordinators, you know, that are aware of increased suicides, and we need to be proactive with that. And we've also increasing our mental health support into areas like our access team, where some of our more vulnerable residents across Perth and Kinross will phone to seek some support in the first instance, as well as some, some locality integrated care models that there are people in our communities who maybe much more isolated. So, you know, it has really changed how we work. And I think for the partnership moving forward, we really need to make sure that all the learning that we have from COVID, that we use it to inform, you know, that developing local strategy and strengthen our sort of stronger communities approach and our compassionate communities approach, as Emma talked about, that compassionate approach in our local areas. And I think in our local areas to be about improving and coordinating access to a variety of person-centred services. And I think most importantly, recognising the value of all people of all ages across Perth and Kinross. And I think that's really the message.
Lindsay, thank you so much. As people know, I like to talk, and I think it is good to talk, and we've heard that message as well today, but I think it's also really important to listen as well. And I think just being able to listen to a number of the presentations today and listening to yourself and Emma and the video there, I think there is a lot to be done, but I think we're on the road there, and I think just as the selfie wings go across the screen there, and I think during that time of recovery, where it gave a lot of people a lot of hope and a lot of desire. I know there was people out running in the morning who would get their picture, would take a selfie next to it and then post it in. So fantastic. And I think these small ideas have been turned into big things, and that's lovely, and it is really good. So we've got one small wee video to watch, and then we can come back. I don't know if we've got time for questions, but we've got one small wee video to watch, and we'll just put that on just now. Thank you. I think, to be fair, I don't think I could say much better than what was just said there. I think that was a great way to end there. So thank you, everybody, for taking the time to listen to ourselves. It's been a fantastic opportunity here today. And yeah, that last video there, I think, summed it up lovely. Thank you.
Thank you very much then to the team from Perth for your contributions. The videos were very cute. I quite enjoyed those. So lastly on the agenda, last but certainly not least, we've come to the Stakeholder Participation Group. As the Chief Executive of a third sector organisation, I know the importance of lived experience and using that valuable expertise to constructively challenge and hold to account and speak your lived truth, and the importance of scrutiny. That has been the role of this next group throughout this process, from the initial inquiry all the way through to the drafting of the strategy and going forward. So after that brief introduction, I will pop up their video that they've put together. Okay.
Okay, good afternoon, everyone. My name's Alan Cotter, and this afternoon is Amanda McLaren and Paul White. Amanda is affectionately known as Mandy, so that's how she will be addressed, throughout the next 20 to 25 minutes. Now, our sort of group discussion is all about the stakeholder participation group. What we are hoping to achieve by the close of our presentation is a little bit of the history of the SPG, how it came to be, its relationship with the independent inquiry, which was chaired by Dr. David Strang. We're then going to explore a few stories of, personal stories of Mandy and Paul, which will hopefully explain how they came to be part of the SPG. The involvement of the SPG in the programme of works which have been undertaken by NHS Tayside over the last 12 months. And finally, we're going to wrap up with a look at how we envisage the SPG going forward. So, without any further ado, what I'd like to do is just start off by looking at the history of the Stakeholder Participation Group. And what I'd like to do is ask Paul to start us off and give us his view as to how the SPG came to be. Paul.
Thanks, Alan. I think the history is that a number of key individuals, and Mandy was one of them, were very affected by personal tragedy and suicides in particular. And they took the matter to parliamentarians, and a debate was held in Parliament, and the outcome of that was that an independent inquiry should be set up. This was commissioned by the Alliance, who are a quasi-government organisation that work in the area of health, and the result of that was David Strang was selected to conduct the inquiry. And out of that, the Alliance decided they needed a formal stakeholder group, and the Stakeholder Participation Group, SPG as we know it now, was formed out of the need for that within the independent inquiry. Now, over 250 people gave admissions, written and verbal, and the product in the end and formulation of the report required ongoing stakeholder involvement, and those that had the interest and the staying power became involved, and now we have the Stakeholder Participation Group as it stands. And one of the Alliance's conditions was that we would be involved with the future planning of mental health services in Tayside, and have had an active involvement in living life well.
Thanks very much, Paul. Mandy, is there anything you want to add?
No, not really. The thing is, we just want to make sure that we're involved and we can see what's happening, and that's why we're here.
Okay. Okay. A question for you, Mandy. In terms of when this was set up, the SPG was set up as part of the, or as an integral part of the independent inquiry. How do you feel that it was received within the NHS?
I think they made out they were quite happy for it, but personally I don't think they were. I think they were going to just have this report and it would be glossed over and sort of swept under the carpet like other reports. But I think our voice has been quite loud, and we've always said we want to be more involved in what's going on. So yeah, I don't think they were too happy, but they're stuck with us, I think. So yeah.
And would you say that? I mean, you said that we're quite loud. Would you say that NHS Tayside has been very receptive to those views?
I think some people are. Some people in the NHS, you can't tar everyone with the same brush. I think some people want to move on and make things better. I also feel some people are stuck in their ways, which for some people it's hard to change things. They don't want to change, especially if they're happy the way things are. But my opinion, it needs changed, big style. So hopefully the ones that do want change will sort of be the ones spearheading all this and get the change that's needed.
I think you're right. I think change is always very difficult, even from your own personal lives, you know, through to large organisations. I think change is a challenge for whoever. In terms of the relationship that the SPG had with the independent inquiry, Paul, what are your thoughts in terms of how that works?
I think that worked very well, and it was very refreshing. David Strang listened. He took the evidence in a very legalistic way, and we haven't really had that before, I don't think. I mean, mental health services in Tayside, through no individual's fault, have been in crisis for nearly the last 20 years. Mental health services employ a huge number of people. Something like 1,700 individuals are employed in mental health by NHS Tayside, but there's been a real leadership void. And the problem is that the chickens are kind of coming home to roost now, and that there are serious issues with recruitment and retention, particularly for medics. I'm a doctor myself, I'm not a psychiatrist, but I know they've had great difficulty retaining psychiatrists, and now a lot of the services are run by locums. And there's been a history of other people being drafted in to solve these problems. I mean, even now, Kate Bell's very good, the current director of mental health, but she is there for a fixed period and she's not come up through NHS Tayside. Same with the associate medical director. So we kind of have to move on to try and solve the problem within Tayside. It is all of our problem. You know, every one of us that lives in Tayside is a stakeholder. And whether we're staff, patients or carers, we all face the same problem and understand the importance of having good mental health services. And as far as the inquiry goes, what was refreshing, as I said, is that David Strang listened. And I think that hasn't happened before. And even when the likes of the quality assurance organisations like Health Improvement Scotland and the Mental Welfare Commission become involved, it hasn't really had any major effect on bringing about change.
Thanks, Paul. Mandy, in terms of how you feel the SPG's relationship with the independent inquiry, is there anything you want to add to it?
I do agree with Paul that it was David Strang did listen. I was very sceptical at anything to do with this because I was like that. Is this just going to be another one of those reports, recommendations, and nothing's done? So I was very, very weary. But going to the meetings and listening, and him listening to us was good because nobody from the NHS seemed to listen beforehand. And I think it has made a difference, and I feel can't wait till he comes back and have a chat again. But I think if it hadn't been for him, I'm not so sure we would have got to the stage because he'd done a proper report. you listened to people on both sides, carers, patients and staff. It wasn't just a one-sided report. So that was good and made it an all-round report. So yeah.
I certainly would concur with both of you. In fact, right from the outset, I felt that David had, he actually instilled a level of confidence that I'd not seen before in any other type of engagement with service users, third sector and carers. And that he was able to maintain throughout the whole of the inquiry periods. And as a result of that, the level of trust in his ability to get to the heart of the matter really just continued to rise throughout the time of the inquiry. So yes, I would certainly agree that being listened to has had a massive influence on the community, and the SPG is reflective of our community. In terms of what I'd like to move on to now is just your own personal stories, if I may, and how it was that you both came to be members of the SPG. And if we could start with you, Mandy, that would be without putting you on the spot.
For me, my son went to get help for his mental health issues and he didn't get the proper help and he ended up taking his own life, which still struggle with all these years on, 6. It's hard for every one of us. So I was protesting, I put in complaints, I was in the paper, everything, trying to get heard because I didn't feel we were being heard. Then other people were contacting me saying, oh, this happened to me, and then somebody else. And I think other people started joining in with reporting it. But it was a hard thing for me knowing that my son had tried to get help. And it was like, it wasn't there, they weren't listening. And it didn't matter how much we were saying, look, he needs help here, please help. It was like nobody was listening. He was a young man, he had his life ahead of him, and that's what started me fighting. And now I'm fighting more for my grandkids coming up. And I'm like that, are they going to be refused to help when they need it? Something has to change here. There's too many people being failed. There's too many young ones getting told ask for help, but when they ask, they don't seem to be receiving it. And I don't understand how this could be happening, but it is somehow. I don't know whether it's lack of communication between people and sort of, different aspects of the hospitals and things like that. But I don't think I'll ever stop fighting till I see some improvement for the up and coming kids. Suicide in Tayside is high, very high. I think 66 in Dundee alone last year. That's one too many. That's far, far too many. And all those families have got to deal with this grief. And it doesn't end just with the death of that loved one, because the effects carry on. My Dale's daughter, my granddaughter, she has the effects of missing her dad every day. So this is why I want to keep being involved. I want to make sure she knows that help is there, and if you push for it and fight for it, you will get it. And that's what this is for me, to try and help others get the help that my son should have got. That's it. Sorry.
Thank you for that, Mandy. Paul, yours is slightly a different story. you want to talk us through that?
Yeah, but firstly, I'd like to say how strong and brave Mandy is. She's so right. I mean, Dundee has the highest suicide rate in Scotland, Dundee City. And that is all of our problems, whether we're a stakeholder or not, whether we're a staff member. And for people working in NHS and allied services, I understand how difficult it is, but we just have to get this right. It's not acceptable. As Alistair Cook, the chief psychiatrist, said last week, the time to make the change is now. My personal experience is quite different in that I have a very close family member who has made a lot of use of mental health services over a long period, going back to 2005. And I'm a welfare guardian for him, so I have a very important role as an advocate. And as he has had more than 4 years in psychiatric institutions in various places, but a lot of those in Tayside, and I've lived the experience with him. And as a doctor, I have practiced as a doctor all of my working life. It's been a revelation to me in the difference between the service and the attitudes towards mental health patients compared with other patients. And here there is because of this made me realize there's a structural gap, because mental health people with mental health problems can't advocate for themselves. So there's a natural imbalance between those caring for them in all sectors. And because of that, I think there's a much greater need to redress this imbalance, which is where stakeholders and those with lived experience have a very important role to play for the future development of services, because by the nature of the conditions they have, the individuals themselves can't advocate for themselves in the way that you or I might be able to if we'd had a heart attack and we were taken into hospital. We'd be able to say, look, this is the problem with this kind of medication I'm having, if you like. So advocacy is the crux to stakeholder participation, but it needs to be independent advocacy, and it's much better if the individuals are having lived experience of that particular local resource.
Thank you both for sharing those very personal stories. I think it's important to say that the stakeholder participation group, as part of the independent inquiry, had just over 50 people, families and individuals who were part of that group that was supporting the inquiry and its work. And it's fair to say that your two individual stories are just two of many that within that group. And of course, that is a small percentage of the whole of Tayside, which was that was affected by NHS Tayside's services. And with David Strang's inquiry, the output from that has been first of all the fact that this particular group and the wider community has been listened to and believed. And secondly, the output from that inquiry was the trust and respect report. Now, the report had 51 recommendations, which NHS Tayside have been addressing over the last 12 months or so. And what I want to move on to now is how the SPG has been influencing the direction of travel for NHS Tayside. So if we could start possibly with you first, Mandy, and then move on to Paul.
For me, I go to the subgroups That's parts of what they're trying to change and what they think should be right. And I listen to them and then I'll put my point over, but that's my point. It's got to be a collective thing to say, this is the way we should go. Sometimes I think it's a disadvantage because there's more NHS workers than us, but I will still keep putting my point over because I feel if I don't, then everything's just going to go the way they want, and it has to be the way we want it as well. Because if it does, then the same doesn't go the way for everybody, then the same mistakes could be made again and again, like what has happened in the past with recommendations. Nobody's actually followed through on these recommendations to see if they're being made. This time we're actually trying to follow through and see if they're being made. So we'll have to wait and see, but I'm hopeful changes will be made. Hopeful.
Yeah. Paul, your thoughts?
Like Mandy, I'm optimistic so far. I mean, it's a bit like baking a cake, isn't it? We're all contributing, and now we've got a chance to contribute to the recipe and ingredients, but we have to wait and see how the cake turns out. And we won't know for 4 or 5 years. But the signs at the moment are promising. A lot of that is due to Kate Bell. To be fair to her, she has listened and she has made sure that stakeholders are involved at every level. And I think that is a good way to move towards trying to change the culture, in that we get to know staff get to know us, and that maybe redresses some of this advocacy gap, if you like, that mental health users don't have a chance to influence. And remember, many of them will be subject to the Mental Health Act, so that they can't advocate for themselves. But yeah, I've been involved in a number of subgroups, and I have an interest in health data, which I think has possibly changed the way some of them look at the health service in Tayside by looking at what's offered by other health boards. But very much we'll have to wait and see. And the big $64 million question will be, because Kate Bell's leaving shortly, who will replace her? Will they have the same degree of openness? I hope so.
I think the only thing I would like to add is that there are two aspects which I think I've found with our involvement with NHS Tayside. Is one that in terms of NHS Tayside working collaboratively with communities and stakeholders, you can agree or disagree to the level, but there has been a significant step change from historical precedents with regards to their collaboration with community stakeholders. In addition to that, I would say that within that grouping, the SPG has, as Mandy has said previously, that they have an overly loud voice, and when we do talk, they tend to listen. And I think that's only going to be for the benefits of NHS Tayside as well as the community. So I agree entirely with what you've both said, and I think that moving forward, if we can maintain that momentum of collaboration with the SPG and the communities, we are, like you, I am also hopeful. That being said, we've been running for just coming up to 25 minutes. What I'd like to do is sort of finish it off and just ask for both of your thoughts in terms of how you envisage the SPG, going on into the future. So start with you, Paul.
Thanks, Alan. Interesting question. The recent history was that once the Alliance left, because we were attached to the Alliance and the Independent Inquiry, that the Stakeholder Participation Group would become part of a consortium that included the third sector. And I think we all felt strongly that it was important that the stakeholder group had an independent chair at the table. If you're planning services or reviewing services that exist, it's worth having the stakeholders there as an independent voice. All due respect to the third sector, but they are funded usually very often by local authority and government, and therefore there is often a conflict of interest, which the stakeholders do not have. The stakeholders essentially are a voice for the patient. And I passionately believe that that is very important. The future of all health services seem to be moving this direction anyway, planning it more and more, not just mental health, is involving stakeholders. So I think it's the way to go. We've chosen to be independent of the third sector and to have our own organisation, still in a very embryonic form. But what's interesting is across Scotland, there is a move towards developing what they're calling lived experience networks. So I think it is something that's going to be grow, and it is something that will be fostered by the Scottish Government, I hope.
Thanks, Paul. Mandy, do you have anything you want to add?
Yeah, I agree with everything. It just seems we're here. We want to protect community as well. It's not, but I don't want it to be us against them. It should be a collaboration of the NHS with us. You don't want to have a big stand-up fight every time. It should be, they're here to help us. We're here to help you. That's the way it should be, and I hope in the future NHS boards will take that on. We're not here to cause them hassle. We just want better for the patients, better for the loved ones. It's not as if we're wanting miracles, you know what I mean? So hopefully it does go on, and hopefully they will realise it's not us against them. It should be us all together trying to work out things in a better way for the whole place. That's what I think.
Lovely. And I think you've both summed it up very nicely. And I'd like to thank you both for agreeing to participate in this. And I would like to thank the audience for taking the time to hear our thoughts about the Stakeholder Participation Group. Good afternoon.
Okay. And that brings us to the end of our agenda today. First of all, thank you very much to the SPG for sharing your thoughts. I think the importance of unfiltered honesty and lived experience and driving service improvement is something that we can all agree on. I'd also like to take a chance to thank all of the participants who came along today. We invited people in community groups from a range of different geographies and communities of interest. And I'd like to thank those groups who took the opportunity to present today for their contributions. They're hugely valuable. The title of this event was Living Life Well in the Community, because we know how important the community is in delivering programs like this. However, this isn't the end. This is actually the start of a much wider journey. As the co-chair of the Communications and Engagement Subgroup, I'm looking forward to working with NHS Tayside, as I'm sure we all are, over the next couple of years to make sure that change happens, because that's ultimately why we're all here. So, in that case, the only other kind of couple things to say is that, yes, all of the questions will be answered. I appreciate that there was a lot of questions today sent to us and there wasn't a lot of time to answer them. However, those will be posted somewhere, and I'm sure we can circulate that information somehow. A copy of the recording of today will also be available, which will be circulated again, probably via social media. The only other thing then to say is a big thank you to everyone who came along today. We really appreciate you taking the time to listen and hear what the different community groups have had to say and ask questions of the people in HS Tayside who are working to make the change in partnership with all of us. So thank you, and hopefully we'll see you at the next one, whenever that one is. Bye.
Thank you, Brooke. Bye.
Thanks,
Bye,
Brooke.
everyone.
Excellent.